Good afternoon. We will now reconvene the regular council meeting of February 20th, 2024. There is no report from closed session, and the next item agenda 7.1 is a public meeting. And we need council to vote for a motion or a resolution to move and open the public meeting, rather that the public meeting is open in accordance with section 34 of the Planning Act RSO 1990. Moved by Councillor Byrne, seconded by Deputy Mayor Huntley. All in favor? That is approved. We'll begin the discussion with staff's discussion about the temporary garden suite zoning bylaw amendment. Is I believe that's Matt Matt. Okay, it's you back there, and then we'll have Karen here in case there's anything to be followed. Thank you, Matt. Through you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you and members of council and public, before you is planning report PEB 2024-05. The report is regarding the proposed zoning bylaw amendment for a temporary garden suite. The purpose of the public meeting is for members of the public to provide comment or ask questions related to this application. The report recommends that bylaw number 2024-08 be approved to rezone a portion of the lands in part of Lot 8 Concession 7 in Cavan, known municipally as 584 Larmer Line, from the rural residential zone to the rural residential exception 29 temporary use 6, an RR 29T6 zone. The zoning bylaw amendment is required to permit and establish the establishment of a temporary garden suite for a period of up to 20 years on the property. The amendment will also permit the garden suite to be located a maximum of 5 meters closer to the front lot line than the existing dwelling. All other standard regulations of the rural residential zone will continue to apply to the property. Notice of the zoning bylaw amendment application was circulated by first-class prepaid mail to all assessed persons within 120 meters, 400 feet of the lands affected by the zoning bylaw amendment application, and to all required ministries and agencies and internal staff and departments. A sign of the notice was posted on the Larmer Line frontage of the subject property, and a notice of public meeting was posted on the township website. The notice complies with the requirements of the Planning Act. To date, township staff have not received any written or verbal comments about the proposed amendment from members of the public. We did receive comments from Ministry of Transportation, Enbridge Gas, Hiawatha First Nations, Peterborough Public Health, and Autonomy Conservation. None of the agencies noted any objections with the application. Township building staff will review the septic capacity at the time of the building permit, and township staff have no objections with the application. The application before council has been reviewed by planning staff in respect to the provincial policy statement 2020, growth plan Greater Golden Horseshoe 2022, County of Peterborough official plan, and the township official plan. The application is considered to be consistent with the PPS and conforms to the growth plan, the county official plan, and the township official plan. Staff are recommending that council receive and consider all comments related to the zoning bylaw application and following public meeting bylaw 2024-08 be approved.
Thank you, Matt. Questions or comments from members of council with regards to the report? Seeing none. Double checking. Yep. Okay. Questions or comments from members of the public now, if anyone likes to speak with regards to the discussion with regards to the suites, they can approach the lectern there, I guess we'll call it, and just nope. Going once, going twice. We are now at consideration of the report. So the recommendation before us is that bylaw number 2024-08 be approved for rezone a portion of the subject lands from the rural residential zone to the rural residential exception 29 temporary use 6. Well, look for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Burns, seconded by Deputy Mayor Huntley. All in favor? That is approved. We now then need a resolution to close this public meeting. Deputy Mayor Huntley, Councillor Natchoff, all in favor? That is approved. Very good. Thank you for that. Moving on in the agenda, we now have a public input session today with regards to 2 other applications. So we need a resolution to open the public input. Councillor Byrne and Councillor Natchoff, all in favor? That is approved. Very good. I believe we have Miss Ellis, or is Matt going to, or sorry, Wayne or Miss Ellis will be presenting this report. Miss Ellis, over to you.
Mayor Graham, members of council, members of the public and staff. The first item on this portion of the agenda is regarding a proposed official plan amendment application and a proposed plan of subdivision application. Before I get into the intricacies of the report, I'm just going to give some background information so that everybody is aware of some of the history that has occurred prior to council's consideration of these matters today. So the Vargas official plan amendment and plan of subdivision applications apply to lands in part of lot 13 concession 5 of the former Cavan ward. Carly, if you could flip to the key map, it would be attachment number 1 to the report. Oh, one map up. The key map will just give everybody an idea of the lands that we are talking about today. Right there. There we are. So the lands are located at the intersection of Fallis Line and County Road 10, and they're at Fallis Line east side. So the Vargas subdivision application was deemed complete by Peterborough County on September 9th of 2021. Details about the application have been available on the County of Peterborough website since that time. The official plan and zoning bylaw amendment applications for these lands were deemed complete by the township on October 29th of 2021. Public notice was issued regarding the complete applications, and information about these applications was posted on the township website since October 29th of 2021. At a February 22nd, 2022 council meeting, representatives of the Biglieri Group came to council with a request for consideration for ministerial zoning orders for both the Vargas lands and the CSU lands. They asked that council entertain the idea of supporting a ministerial zoning order for the property. A concept plan was presented at that time, and report planning 2022-08 was presented for council's consideration. At that time, council supported the MZO. The province approved the MZO on April 1st of 2022. On April 6th, 2022, information was posted to the township website regarding the approved MZO and the council report that went with that. Following the approval of the MZO, the applications proceeded through the planning approvals process. The developer's agent hosted a neighborhood meeting for the official plan amendment and plan of subdivision application on May 18th of 2022. The statutory public meeting for the official plan amendment and plan of subdivision application was held on August 2nd of 2022. Report planning 2022-41 was presented at that time. Following that public meeting, there was additional discussion about the design of the subdivision. And there was discussion about whether the road should be connected from Fallis Line to Coldbrook or not. And on November 20th of 2023, report PEB 2023-48 was presented to council. And that report then resulted in a motion that council directed staff to work with the applicant for a connection from Fallis Line to Coldbrook. The plan of subdivision before council today is the 5th submission. The submission is supported with a revised functional servicing study and traffic impact study addendum. The information has been updated to reflect the road connection and address traffic and the drainage strategy for the road connection. A council motion of August 2022 required an additional opportunity for public comment. The meeting today is that opportunity. Please note that this meeting is not a statutory public meeting as per the requirements of the Planning Act. This is in addition to what is required. Notice of the opportunity for additional public comment was published in the February 2024 edition of the Millbrook Times and posted on the township website. So now if you could scroll down one more slide, Carly, please, to the plan of subdivision. Perfect. If you could, there we go. So this is the plan of subdivision that is the subject of today's meeting. So this plan of subdivision application affects 29.48 hectares, or just in size, with approximately 300 meters of frontage on County Road 10 and approximately 580 meters of frontage on the extension of the Fallis Line East road allowance. This proposal consists of 263 residential units. There are 128 single detached units, 55 street townhouses, and 80 units in a mixed-use building in the northwest corner of the property. So at the top left of the property is a block for mixed use. That's mixed use with commercial and residential together. This development also includes one block for stormwater management. There are two natural heritage system blocks. There's one parkland block, one walkway block to provide connection from the subdivision to Buckland Drive, and there is one road widening block. Street A will provide a connection from Fallis Line East to Colebrook Drive as per the council motion of November 20th, 2023. This plan will be serviced with municipal piped water and wastewater services. To permit the plan of subdivision, an official plan amendment application was filed. The application needs to change the land use designations in the current Township of Cavan Monaghan official plan. So the amendment is required to expand the Millbrook settlement area boundary, realign the land use designations, and add an exception policy to specify that the regulations of the ministerial zoning order will guide development of the subject lands. With the official plan amendments, the maximum building height for apartment buildings and mixed-use buildings will be 4 stories. The limits for all other development will continue to be 3 stories. So normally in our official plan today, the height limit is limited to 3 stories. So with this official plan amendment application, that height will be increased to 4 stories. Development in the community commercial designation will be in accordance with the regulations of the ministerial zoning order. In addition to the standard permitted uses in the community commercial designation, additional uses will be permitted. Those additional uses will include banks and financial institutions, liquor stores, post offices, personal services, business, professional, and medical offices as a primary use, and dwelling units in a mixed-use building. The general development policies of the community commercial designation will not apply. These policies generally include a maximum gross floor area for commercial uses, maximum building height of 10 meters, the requirement for a detailed market impact study, and a detailed traffic impact study. So we are getting traffic impact through the plan of subdivision process, but those other requirements will not apply to this application. Also, notwithstanding the policies of section 8.3 of the official plan, the boundaries of the Millbrook settlement area are being expanded to include the land subject to the ministerial zoning order. With the official plan amendment, there are a couple of mapping changes occurring as well. And if you could scroll down, and it's going to be the official plan amendment attachment, Carly, which will be colored maps. Keep going. Right there. Okay. So Schedule A1, which is the Millbrook settlement area, is being amended by changing the land use designations on the property from agricultural, residential, community, commercial, institutional special policy area number 1, natural core area, and natural linkage area to the residential, community, commercial, and natural core area. A text box is also being added to reference section 4.18B. And you can see the property subject to the official plan application is outlined with the red dashed line. The green area is the natural heritage blocks. The yellow area is the residential area, and the orange color is the community commercial area. If you could flip to the next one, Carly, please, which is Schedule A to the official plan. So, and this schedule is being amended by changing the land use designations on the property from agricultural to Millbrook settlement area and amending the location of the settlement area boundary to include the subject lands. A text box is being added to the schedule to reference section 4.1.8B. So that entails the official plan amendment application subject to today's consideration. A complete copy of that amendment is included in the report. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those at the end of the presentation. With the notice of the applications being published in the Millbrook Times, we have received a couple of written comments regarding these applications from members of the public. Both Marion Thompson and Jane Zednick have indicated that they are unable to attend today's meeting, but they did send written comments via email. Mrs. Thompson's submission relates primarily to the servicing for the subdivision. She's asked questions about the 20% reserve capacity for non-residential units, how units will be available for infill lots and additional dwelling units, will the municipal class EA be made available to the public, and how will the utility issue like gas and hydro affect the proposed development? Ms. Zednick's comments included commentary on the scant information available for today's meeting. For example, there were no maps or details about the proposals, no information on the main page of the township website, posting of the agenda before a long holiday weekend. In her opinion, there needs to be public information to present a public information meeting to present information in a succinct, straightforward, and transparent manner. Her technical comments related primarily to water, wastewater, and stormwater servicing. Her submission questions servicing allocations and how the numbers are generated, groundwater supplies and protection thereof, the lack of available information to residents, particularly with regard to the master servicing study, how the township will ensure the subdivisions are developed with continual water safety and security, what happens if there's not a sustainable water supply, the lack of affordable units, and gas and hydro supplies. So just in response to some of that, the technical questions regarding water and wastewater servicing have been referred to RVA, who are the authors of the Township's Master Servicing Study. And it's my understanding that they will be providing written correspondence to both Ms. Zednick and Mrs. Thompson regarding their technical questions about the servicing issues. I can tell you, Council, that the agenda has been posted on the Township website as per the standard Township operating procedure. Business carries on regardless of whether there's a long weekend or not. We follow the same process and procedure. Ms. Zednick is right. There was no map provided with the notice placed in the Millbrook Times. There were, in full disclosure, also issues with the link that was provided. Those issues have been noted and will be considered in all future applications. When Township staff did become aware of the issue with the link, we did provide information that they would be able to provide or get information at Peterborough County's website, and they were referred to that site for all technical information. So as per standard operating procedure with the plan of subdivision, the application has been reviewed in terms of the policy structure and context in place at this time. That means the provincial policy statement, growth plan, Peterborough County official plan, our own official plan, the ministerial zoning order. Township staff are satisfied that the applications conform to those documents and comply as required. And draft plan conditions for the approval of the subdivision have been developed by staff in consultation with representatives of the owner developer. The proposed draft plan conditions for the Vargas subdivision are included in attachment number 6 to the planning report. The conditions include servicing requirements, phasing, park and environmental lands, external services like gas and hydro, external roads, internal roads, sidewalks, street lighting, fencing, sediment, erosion control, stormwater management, architectural control. All of these items are standard items that we deal with through plans of subdivision applications. So there are conditions proposed that we will ask Peterborough County to apply to the approval of the subdivision. Those conditions will have to be satisfied by the applicant prior to final approval of the subdivision. Having said all of that, the recommendations in the report for you today are firstly, that council approve bylaw number 2024-09 to adopt official plan amendment number 15 to the Township of Cavan-Monaghan official plan. That council authorize the submission of the adopted official plan amendment to Peterborough County for review and approval. Thirdly, that council receive and consider any public comments received on February 20th, 2024. And finally, that council support the approval of application 15T-01005, subject to the draft plan conditions provided in attachment number 6 to this report, and any revisions thereto required from public comment received on February 20th.
Thank you, Ms. Alice, for that presentation of the report. Before we get to the consideration report, we want to open it up for members of the public wishing to speak. Just so everyone's aware, we haven't hired a new staff member, and members of council might be also aware. Michael Testaguza is here on behalf of the Biglieri Group. Just for the sake of flow to and from the microphone, we wanted to keep the microphone open for the public. We've sat Michael with the rest of staff, so he has access to his own microphone to address any questions with regards to either of the two applications, just so everyone's aware of who everyone is and who's their employer. Michael, thank you for joining us to answer those questions today. With that said, we will now ask or open the forum for members of the public wishing to speak with regards to the application. So when you approach the mic, there's this, you can see it lights up here. That means you're ready to go. So mean, there's only so many mics can be on at one time, so it's an on and off again. So when you're finished speaking, you'll want to hit the mic before to make sure you're lit up so that you can then speak and we can hear you for the recording. And then when you're done speaking, just press it off so we can move the mic around to the next people to speak, okay? With that said, the meeting is open. People are welcome to come forward. Just state your name and address served for it, and then we'll get to go.
Hello, my name is Steve Warner, and I live at 23 Houston Street on the west side of Millbrook. I've also previously served as a member of the Board of Directors for the Baxter Creek Watershed Alliance, and I did have some help with some of these questions and outline from one of the current Board of Directors, Greg Onufrichuk, who some of you probably know. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councilors, for allowing me to speak. I really appreciate it. This is the first time I've done this kind of thing, so I'm hopefully following protocol and whatever, and I won't go on too long, I promise that. I just have a couple of concerns regarding the new subdivision. One is I'd like to address the extension of the Grand Trunk Railway Trail that we currently have in Millbrook right now from Station Street that ends at County Road 10. The extension would go east along the rail bed through Cedar Valley. It's beautifully elevated. It's a fantastic trail option, and it was recommended in the Cavan Monahan Trails Master Plan, but so far it has really been ignored on the current draft plans for the subdivision. The township of Cavan Monahan is ideally located in close proximity to many trails, including the Trans-Canada Trail, the Victoria Rail Trail, the Gananoski Hiking Trail, and the Oak Ridges Trail. This provides us with many opportunities to create linkages to some of these trails. And we can certainly use abandoned rail lines, unopened road allowances, and existing roads. And I really believe that access to Lindsay, Peterborough, and the Gananoski Forest can be achieved by creating linkages to these fields, trails, and provide economic benefits to Cavan Monahan with increased visitation. The abandoned Grand Trunk rail line represents an excellent corridor linking Cavan Monahan Township to the city of Peterborough, the Trans-Canada Trail, and the Lakefield via the Rotary Trail. Lands on the portion of the abandoned Grand Trunk line that could link Cavan Monahan to Peterborough are both publicly and privately owned. Facilitating linkage to this trail would require some land acquisition, negotiation, and easements and agreements. I do have the proposed linkages that I can leave should the council request a copy of my whole report. I can leave a copy of that. The advantage of creating this trail is relatively low cost to construct it. The abandoned rail line would only need to be upgraded and maintained as the rail bed already exists. A linkage could be established along the abandoned trunk rail line from Station Park in Millbrook Ward east beyond County Road 10 to Fraserville, terminating at the eastern boundary of Cavan Monahan Township on Johnson Drive. Access to Whitfield Landing and Richard O'Connor Wildlife Area could also be established using signage on the trail. The main question that this background has sort of provided, why I provided it, is that would be at this point why the township has not considered negotiating any easements or agreements with the developer to open the proposed trail in the design process as per the trail's master plan. I guess sort of my comment would be if we have a trails master plan for the region, why does not the council not use it to guide in the planning process? If you reference page 37 of the master plan document, while there's several recommendations, 3 are very important. Adopt the trail master plan as the framework for the systematic implementation of integrated community network of trails and public lands in the township of Cavan-Monaghan. All new development, redevelopment, greenfield and brownfield, and road construction proposals should consider the potential for linkages and enhancement of trails and public lands. Ensure that new development, redevelopment plans include connections with existing trails and linkages by incorporating appropriate references to the trail master plan in the official plan. So I guess at this point, it's really, why have we not addressed that in any, I think this is the, I don't know, 3rd, 4th, 5th redesign or implementation process for this, and there's been no discussions at all that we can very easily modify one of our very nice trails and extend it through where the new residential area is planned. However, there's no sense complaining if you don't offer a solution. And there are, as per the counselor, Mr. Bryan had said okay to leaving a copy. I can show a couple of maps where it's very simple to extend the trail from Highway 10 or from County Road 10 through from the map that we saw with the proposed residential, the bottom part, there's green lands and the trail can be extended through there. It's very low cost. There's still time to do it. Certainly great community PR. And it would be following the master trails plan. And I just, again, and it would also support our heritage efforts, as that Grand Trunk rail line was a major link between Peterborough and Toronto, and Millbrook was certainly a major stop along that line. So I guess my question is, and I'm not obviously looking for an answer, but just a consideration that maybe we look into applying our master plan and having the trail run through the new subdivision in an appropriate and affordable manner. And I can leave a copy of my report. So thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Welcome. That was well done, Steve. You nailed everything. So congratulations on the process. For everyone else watching, that's how it's done. Mic's on, mic's off. That was fantastic. So kudos to you for doing that. I know it's an intimidating, especially when the room's full, it can be very intimidating. So great job on that. Any questions or comments with regards to the comments? If not, we want to keep, there's a lot of people here, so I want to keep speaking. One thing I can speak to is while there wasn't consideration with regards to the trails extensions with the Vargas portion, in the CSU portion, that is the next item on the agenda, you'll notice that in the trail component along that corridor, there is an inclusion of all of the parkland from the subdivisions have been allocated into that, so that that continuation of the trail northbound can occur through the subdivision within the parkland that's attributed to. So it's not reflected in the Vargas one, to your point, and I'm sure council can take looks at the certain things available for that consideration, but just so it was reflected in the CSU subdivision as well with regards to the parkland. Any other members of Councilor Byrne?
Through the chair, I have several questions, but I'll take a few here right now and give the people in the audience a chance to chime in. I'm personally upset and concerned the idea of going 4 stories for any apartment dwellings going into this new subdivision. 2 things that impact me right away when I listen to people is, does it fit the community? And does it cause us grief down the road as far as fire response or anything along that line? Because I certainly don't want the township to be impacted in such a way that we end up having to spend huge money to support an increase or a new availability for the fire services to deal with something along that line. So the other thing I'm kind of, one of the other questions I'd like to ask is, with this amendment is going to reshape the settlement boundaries. And I'm not quite clear on, it looks like Vargas has appropriated or bought both basically the next two lots going down Larmer Line, and they're fairly straight lines. The lots are laid out hundreds of years ago. But when I look at the way the settlement boundary is going for the new Millbrook settlement, I'm confused at why it has so many jogs and things in the northeast corner. I don't understand, is the development company Vargas interested in squaring that up? What was the reasoning for the new layout for the settlement area? To me, it kind of looks basically cobbled together. I understand from the documents that I got last week that yous are going to turn over some land. I forget which block it is. I think it's block 141, which is going to be somewhat unbuilt on, right? Is there a possibility that squaring up your property to the east and making it the boundary of the new Millbrook hamlet would make things a lot cleaner? And is there a portion of that that could also be a set aside for any future parkland or trails or anything along that lines that the community might take place of? Thank you.
Okay, we'll continue on with members of the public for comments with regards to this specific application. Yeah.
My name is Malcolm Byard. My address is 889 Highway 7A, Cavan. I've been a ratepayer in Cavan Monaghan for 15 years and a resident of Peterborough County for 20. I raised two children in Cavan that were able to walk to a sports facility and play baseball and soccer. And in this particular plan, you have a very small park allotment. Prior to this meeting, I took a drive through the new development that's just south of this chamber, and there's a park there with one basketball court in it. And I'm asking the developer if they have plans for a park that would suit sports facilities. I know we have a hockey arena, which is great, but Cavan supports a soccer field that runs till 10 o'clock at night, 7 days a week. So that proves that there's a want for sports facilities in this area. And also the need for community space. The trail would certainly accommodate that, but certainly this community is growing, and along with it, we should have recreational facilities for children and adults. Pickleball court, perhaps. They're full. Those pickleball courts, outdoor courts, are full in other communities that I visited. So this tiny little park strip in this application and in the next park application is simply, from my eye, is a place for people to take their dogs, and not a place that would be large enough to accommodate a sports facility, parking for people coming from out of town, etc. That's all I have to say to that matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael, would you maybe want to present, there's a number of topics there. Obviously, we're going through the process in phase 3 of our Parks and Rec Master Plan. With regards to the development itself, the developers, when they're a plan of subdivision, there's very specific regulations as to what can be requested of them with regards to parkland. You maybe want to speak to that, Michael, and it kind of overlays both because of the MZO applied to both these two. It's a bit complicated, but I'll let you speak to it, Michael.
Certainly, happy to. Yes, the red light is on. Happy to speak to that. And if you want, I can go into some of the other questions that were asked, but I'll stick to that one first, and your worship, and then you can let me know if you want me to go elsewhere. Through the Planning Act, the requirement for a draft plan of subdivision is 5% of the land, the net developable land, being set aside for community parks. So in this case, between the two properties, it's actually somewhere closer to 6.5% that's being set aside cumulatively between the two. So the draft plan of subdivision here is actually exceeding the requirements of the Planning Act, which it doesn't technically have to do, but obviously in order to provide that large north-south connection, which is in the CSU property on the western side of the town, as well as to provide parkland in both locations that isn't simply a north-south trail connection. We did want to make sure we were hitting all of those facets. Certainly through the Planning Act, developers don't actually build the park. They convey the space and then the municipalities will build the park. Through the draft plan of subdivision process, this is step one, if we can call it that, which is the draft approval. Following that is detailed design. At detailed design, what we typically do is we develop designs for these park blocks that the municipality can then take and actualize. So in this case, you're seeing on Vargas, one park, and on CSU, which is on the west side, actually 3 parks. 2 big parts of that are a north-south connection to continue the trail network, and 1 is a standalone park. But you'll notice in the north-south connection park, we've really widened it out as it hits County Road 10 to make that both a north-south trail, but also to integrate into a larger park system. The other thing I would say is that between the 2 sites, on the Vargas site, 55% of the site's actually going to be conveyed to the township for natural heritage protection. And in those blocks, you'll actually have that rail bed. So over time, the town can do that trail. And they'll have most of the land needed in order to actualize, and we can pull it up later. But that's actually land going to be conveyed. So 55% of Vargas's land holding will be conveyed to the township in the long run for natural protection and trail network if so desired. And then on the CSU side, I think it's closer to 33% of that site is being conveyed, and that's mostly in the southern portion. Part of that is going to be a north-south trail connection, presumably the Station Trail, which I understand is kind of informally used currently, and that'll be continued through a more formal trail once you get through the subdivision portion. So there is actually a lot of land being conveyed to the municipality through this. We always obviously present the number of units and things of that nature. But yeah, one thing that you'll notice when the plans come back up is a significant allotment of public land actually on both, aside from the parkland component, which is over 5% of the site. I can talk to the other points, but I don't want to belabor it.
Thank you, Michael. I think the only other thing that you might want to touch on, and I was going to go to the chief, but I think you can speak to it maybe a bit more clear from your perspective or from your side of the argument, is with regards to the requirement of the sprinkler system required in the developments for those 4th story. That was a condition requested by the township in order to go to the 4th, that additional floor. So I just wanted you to highlight that for Councillor Byrne and the rest of the audience as well.
Certainly, yeah, happy to talk to that. So there certainly is a condition in the approval. So in the staff report, and it's a long report, but right at the end of it, actually, for both subdivisions, because there is in each, well, there's a couple things to note there. In each subdivision, there's one mixed-use commercial block, and those are the locations where there could potentially be 4-story buildings. So this isn't plan-wide. There are actually 2 very small portions of the plan where there may be a possibility for a 4-story building. So we should start there by saying it's not a plan-wide item. It's very specific, 2 small blocks. One at the southeast corner, in this one specifically for Vargas, it's at the southeast corner of County Road 10 and Fallis Line. So that's the only place where there could be a 4-story building. The fire chief has asked for certain conditions, as his worship has mentioned, with respect to sprinkling those 4-story buildings if they become 4-story buildings in the fullness of time. I think that's probably the 2 pieces to hit on there. I guess I should also mention that these wouldn't be the first 4-story buildings approved also in Cavan. There are, I believe, 3 4-story buildings in zoning for them on the Highlands of Millbrook North.
Thank you, Michael. Other members of the public? The forum is opened. Welcome back, Malcolm.
Just a clarification from council that these heritage lands, this 55%, can be used by the municipality for recreational facilities.
So it would depend on the zoning and the environmental constraints. As you can notice, the heritage is a broad term, but there's a lot of environmental sensitivities, which is why they're being protected from development. So it's very unlikely, I would suggest, that those lands would then be future homes for facilities like bricks and mortar facilities, but for things like passive or trail recreation. The Miller Valley Trails is the sort of the chieftains of our trail network and the master plan that you alluded to earlier. So it's within the scope and capability of those volunteers to really be the ambassadors in extending the trail network. And having served on that committee in the previous term of council, I know, there's a lot of work to just maintain the existing system that we have rather than expanding it with regards to the limited resources and volunteers that we have for that committee and the volunteers that they seek out for the trail days. So I think it's something that I know it's in the master plan. It's something that comes under discussion. It's just a matter of capacity and resources on their behalf to sort of expand the trail network based on what they have now. And I know in the budget that we're getting to later in this report, there's an extensive amount of work that's going in this year to address some of the bridge work in the existing trail network in those sort of water sensitive areas to make sure that those trails can be sustained too. So that's where the focus has been in my experience. But so to answer your question, those specific lands for the Vargas, I doubt that there would be significant development of any kind on those lands being delegated to the township.
So trail network, yes, sports fields, no. Okay, so we still are without sports fields expansions with these two developments. Am I correct?
Yes, and that's why, like, other than the parkland allocation, that's, as Michael had mentioned, the township has always had a position where we're trying to advocate for more than the bare minimum, but as you're aware, the province is changing even that minimum. So we're not even able to ask for those sorts of same sort of frameworks that we're having. But with regards to the expansion of recreation, that is a big part of what is underway for phase 3 of the strategic or the Parks and Master Plan update. And most of that, any facility discussion, we're still in the process for figuring out exactly what the main lands in around the existing CMCC will be compromised of. But I know in the initial plan that we saw, there were a number of amenities like pickleball courts, volleyball courts, tennis courts, things of that nature. The intention is for that site to be sort of the mecca of parks and recreation in this portion of the township, and obviously Captain Park and the continuation of what the expansions or enhancements that will be a part of the master plan that we're doing as well. But it's not really part and parcel with the plans of subdivision themselves, because the Planning Act states that you can get your 5% or any more that you can get with regards to your request. But from a field or from an actual facility standpoint, that's not really within the scope of plans of subdivision.
So just to finalize my comments, I attended an all candidates meeting for my ward. And there was a lot of discussion about how this community is about to change radically. And at least 3 of you were at that meeting and promised that we would maintain the type of community that we live in. And I strongly believe that we should have sports facilities that are within walking distance from our homes in this community, like we have had in the past. And Millbrook is underserved at the moment, and we're at capacity for what we do have. And it's great that our developers are allowing 6% park space when they only have to give 5%. But I'm asking council to reconsider this proposal and request an expansion of park space in both these developments. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from members of the public?
Barry Armstrong. I've been at the Fallis Line for over 60 years. And I was just wondering, in regards to this new subdivision, how is this going to affect the schools down here? What's the plans for our children? Where are they going to go to school now? We're at capacity as it is. We've got maybe a couple trailers, more trailers that can hold 100 people maybe. What's the future plan? Where are kids all going to go to school now? Just thought I'd run that by you.
Sure. So in the Tower Hill North subdivision, which is neither of these two, there's a 6-acre parcel of land that is in the process of being taken over by the school board. I don't believe it's changed hands just yet because there's processes, and I think it needs to be on servicing before it gets handed over from a land parcel. Maybe Karen would like to speak to that more, but there is plans for the construction of a new school board. I've met with members of staff with the school board to try to get some understanding what their plans are. But that hasn't borne a lot of fruit, unfortunately, but you know, it's a bureaucratic process with the school board that's completely separate from the township. We've been informing them over the last 20 years about the growth that's been, or I guess last 10 years more specifically since the expansion of the water treatment plant, that the growth has to occur because of the debenture funding for that plant. So they've been aware of the coming pressure, but it's one of those things where I think a lot of the decision making isn't made until they feel as though there's a threshold when the dire straits or the concerns exist before forecasting or believing in forecasts to exist. But Ms. Ellis, would you like to provide any further comments or clarity on anything I misspoke about there?
Thank you, Mayor Graham, members of council, members of the public. The mayor is correct. There is a 6-acre site dedicated in the Tower Hill North subdivision. So along Fallis Line West, there will be 6 acres dedicated that will be transferred to the school board at the time when the plan is finally approved and services are available to that site. So the plan is in the hopper for a new school. What that means to the existing school, we're not sure, but I can tell you at the existing school right now, I'm sure you're all aware that there are a number of portables on site. They are looking at placing a number of other portables on site to address some accommodation pressures. They are also, the school board is looking at realigning the boundaries of certain schools within the county to address the enrollment issue. And I believe at one point in time, they were talking about placing or requiring it, something be placed in the subdivision agreement that any purchasers of the new homes would be aware that their children would not be going to school in Millbrook at this time.
But just for further clarity on that, the school board manages its entire ship. It's not beholden to the township. We work together to provide them the data and give them as much lead time as we can, but decisions take everyone makes them in their own way, I guess. So anyways, we'll hopefully hear more about that, but I'm expecting with the work that's being done there, that land will be serviced soon. And so I'd urge all parents to reach out to their school board trustee and have those conversations when that land comes on, what those plans are. I think everyone is chomping at the bit to learn and figure out exactly what grades, what capacity, and from a municipal standpoint, when we're doing our Parks and Rec study, we'd also like to know what parks and recreational amenities they're planning on building at the school. So we're not building the same thing next door. So we're open and we've expressed an interest in sort of being a part of those conversations so that we're not, creating the same sort of infrastructure, right next door in this case. So we're optimistic that those plans will continue moving forward and we can work together to figure out the best sort of composition of that as well. But it is completely separate from the municipal process. Well, the timeline starts when they take ownership of the property. That's really how it works. And we're not there yet and that was something we had to learn as well, or I had to learn, I should speak, that, why isn't things happening now? And so even the property taking ownership of that requires a certain, there's a rule somewhere that says until it's serviced, it doesn't become ours. And maybe it's a taxation, maybe it's a cost, but it's also a planning, just how they do business. And that's how it is. Sorry for that long-windedness. Other members of the public wishing to speak with this application? Going once. Was that me? Oh, sorry. Thought I was having a stroke there for a second. Anyways, we are now we have heard from members of the public with this application. There are 4 recommendations in the report. Any questions, members of council, with regards to the report? Just let me catch up here. Councillor Byrne.
Through the chair, I'm not sure if there's anybody at home that can chime into this public meeting or not, but to Michael's comment about the amount of land being conveyed, does that exclude the stormwater pond to the southwest corner? So that other acreage you're talking about is above and beyond that block? Okay. The other thing I'm concerned or confused.
Sorry, Jerry. I'm just going to
Certainly, and yes, sorry, I was nodding my head, yes. When I calculated that figure, I didn't include the stormwater block on either of the properties. So it would be higher if you considered the storm block, and it would be higher if you considered the parkland and the roads as well. But that's just the natural heritage conveyance. And I do want to, since I have the floor ever so briefly, just apologize and clarify it to Malcolm. I wasn't attempting in any way to insinuate that the sports facilities would go on that land. That was more to the trails comment. Although I do think when you see the 2 park blocks, it's great to get input like that with respect to the types of facilities, even pickleball, something that maybe can be accommodated on some of the smaller blocks. Whereas you have some of your larger town facilities that may be going on municipal blocks or school board blocks. That's certainly the way I've seen those kind of roll out over time in larger scale subdivisions as well. Sorry to steal the floor there.
Back to you, Councillor Byrne, sorry.
No problem. Through the chair. So when I look at attachment number 4, it's on 36, page number 36 of my paperwork. When we changed the format from being a walkway down to Colebrook, and I'm not sure how that's going to impact the people that bought homes down there, thinking that they were going to be isolated and not be a thoroughfare. But it looks like the developer manages to pick up an extra building lot by making 3 or 4 lots smaller, less pie shaped. But when I look at this one diagram, I'm trying to figure out, are they going to lose frontage off of those lots, or those blue lines? What are we actually being represented there?
Certainly happy to take that. So with respect to the cul-de-sac or the connection point, we've been showing a cul-de-sac as you know for quite some time, and then we were most recently directed to make that connection. So certainly that's what happens when you have a cul-de-sac. You know, you have your larger pie-shaped lots at the end of it. When you go to a straight street, just carrying forward the lotting fabric that was existing already on the remainder of that street, it ended up netting a lot positive. Truthfully, that wasn't necessarily our idea, but that was just kind of how the math works out when you get rid of the cul-de-sac. With respect to those blue arrows, I believe that's actually showing drainage area. So it's just showing that in those 2 portions, that small portion of the street and the backyards of those couple lots will end up draining rather than to the new pond, to the existing kind of municipal network that exists in Colebrook. So our engineers, as well as with Orca and regional staff did take a look, or county staff, sorry, did take a look at that. It's a very small area, as you can imagine there, that's going to be conveyed kind of southward and then eastward. So it was found to be kind of not problematic in that regard. I'm sure Wayne can speak more to it, but those 2 areas there are just ultimately showing drainage areas.
Councillor Byrne, follow up?
Yes, please, through the chair. So when I glance at this and the topography of the ground around there, in a heavy rain, are the people that used to live on that cul-de-sac in Colebrook expecting to see a fairly high flow that won't be catched into the storm drains around the edge of a street, and it's just going to flow up on their yards?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Byrne, the plan before you shows the drainage areas, and the intent there was that the drainage from the new subdivision is intercepted. It is directed through a separate storm outlet to Baxter Creek. So there is no impact to the yards and drainage of the existing lots on Colebrook.
Thank you, Mr. Hancock. So if I'm not mistaken, just for my own understanding, the drainage that was alluded to on the previous map, it really only pertains to the lower portion of housing, because if everyone's familiar with the topography and being on the side of the hill, we can't make the water drain up into the settlement, the stormwater management pond to the west. So that's why it's being connected and traversed down to the south and into the municipal system. Is that correct, Mr. Hancock?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the major portion of the development, of course, is directed to the stormwater management pond. There is an isolated area to the south that's directed to the separate storm outlet as shown with the blue arrows.
Thank you. Other questions? Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair, on page 64 of my handout, it speaks to the road widening that's going to come down. I'm trying to figure out the block that runs north-south along the County Road 10 seems to stop at the semi-commercial industrial block that runs east and west along the south edge of Fallis. I'm getting from what I'm reading that at some point in time, if County Road 10 needed the space, the road would widen to the east. How is that going to affect that block at the top that's slated for commercial?
Michael, so just before that, so there is actually, it's being moved up in the county meeting tomorrow, just for clarity, because Michael doesn't know this. So there is a corridor study that's being conducted by the county of Peterborough for County Road 10. There's a motion or a report on the agenda tomorrow for for that study that was scheduled to occur in 2025 to be moved up to 2024 this year. Because obviously the development is already occurring and is going to continue to occur with regards to these two MZO properties that have been endorsed by council. So, and also Michael will probably allude to this, but again, this isn't the site plan design. This is just the planning process application. So where the lines are for this, those aren't the ends of the structure or reflection of the site plan. Those are simply the parcels at play in there. So there are already existing plans that we are asking the county to revisit because of some of the composition has changed and is a bit nonsensical with regards to some of the components, in my opinion, but that's just my opinion. So I probably preface that. But Michael, maybe you'd like to add some clarity to that.
Certainly, and happy to chime in there. So this is actually a little bit far away, but I don't know if it's possible if we can zoom this image into the northwestern portion of the plan. If we can. Oh, perfect. So there's two things that I guess should come out first. The first portion being the distinction between what planners call a road widening, which I apologize for the confusion and for my profession at large. So a road widening is at this stage, all we're doing is carving up land into individual lots and blocks. So when we say a road widening in this instance that you'll see on that left corner there, that strip, that's a strip of land that's being carved out and given to the county. That's based on their property requirements. So they say, please give us an extra X feet of land, because that's the land we need in order to put in the ultimate traffic scenario for this part of the world, right? Anywhere and everywhere. And you'll see there's also some that we're providing to the township on Fallis Line. And then there's the distinction between what's actually built there and when the actual travelable portion of the pavement is widened or not widened, or sidewalks are put in, or streetlights are put in. So there's a bit of a distinction there, but there is on the entire west end of the draft plan, and so on the entire east side of County Road 10, widening shown straight from the southern limit of where the property touches County Road 10, all the way up to the corner. It actually includes a little site triangle at the corner of Fallis and County Road 10. You'll see that triangle portion right there. And then it actually continues eastward, another road widening, in that case to Fallis Line, that goes along the frontage of that mixed use block over to Street A. So that's all based on the land required by the county, by the township, but also in coordination, and sorry, it's planning processes, and there's a lot of different items coming to these determinations, but also a traffic study, which is analyzing, you know, do you need right turn lanes here? Do you need left turn lanes here? And that's why you have that widening actually that's going along Fallis Line on the south side there, which is to allow for turning lanes as are going to be required at that signalized intersection. I hope I haven't lost the point there, but.
Thank you, Michael. Other questions, Councillor Byrne?
To continue on that through the chair. So that's that daylighting triangles that you're referring to. I'm guessing that was what I tried to presume from this. And that area that's needed for that triangular portion is dictated by somebody else other than yous. But I see in the report also, because you own the property to the north side of Fallis, you're being expected at this point in time, according to the paperwork I read, they want you to put curbs on both sides of Fallis Line down the unassumed road allowance that's there. I'm just wondering, because you own both sides, I guess it's not as big a problem, but I'm trying to guess how you're going to handle that. And will those curbs be like rigid straight edge curbs, or will they be something like a wider angled one that you can actually maybe access the shoulders or whatever on? How that all plays into things.
Certainly happy to take that question. I'll tell you right off the bat, I can't take you all the way here with that answer. In terms of the design of Fallis Line itself, and you know, what kind of curbs will be used and things of that matter, that's kind of typically done at that next stage, right? So at this stage, we say, you know, we're going to need lanes, they're going to need to be this wide, you know, and we're leaving aside the land for that. At detailed design, which is done kind of after the draft approval, is typically when you get to that nitty gritty level of design, which kind of curb are we going to use? How far is it going to extend? You know, does it need to be put on the north side of the right of way, or could you leave a more rural standard on the north side until development goes on the north side? That's typically all confirmed at that detailed design stage, which is the next stage, of course. And which will put those materials together and then work with town staff to kind of finalize that design. So at this time, I don't actually have that final answer, but you are right. My client does own the site to the north as well. So, and we know that's also slated for commercial development. An application for which is actually also before the town through the site plan process. So we are trying to move along that commercial side as quickly as possible as well. So that when the services come up Street A, we can kind of just continue up the north side there. So it might be a little bit less of an interim problem in this case because of that.
Mr. Hancock, anything you want to maybe provide clarity on with regards to the township in that next phase?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Byrne, first of all, this subdivision will require the extension of Falls Line, and the intent in our conversations with the county is to have an ultimate design at County Road 10 and Falls Line that would accommodate what's referred to as through lanes, future traffic lights, sidewalks, et cetera. So at this point, we don't have that because we haven't seen the detailed design, but we are asking the consultant for the developer to provide that as a draft plan condition, that they provide it for approval so that we can look at what the intersection will look like, not only for the residential development here, but also for the possibility of the commercial to the north, as well as what's happening on the west side. And the county's on board with that. It is their intersection, and they're working with us and the consultant to get that from the finalized.
Thank you, Wayne. Councillor Byrne.
Through the chair to Michael, what you were talking about there leads me to another question I have for sizing. So we're going to have to put stormwater, we're going to have to put wastewater, we're going to have to put fresh water and telecommunications somewhere up the middle. I'm guessing we're going to all come up Street A. But the grand plan for the township over the last while, they have this idea that we're going to expand all the way up to the bottom end of 115. My question today is, how will you possibly size the infrastructure that's going to be buried so that it's ready? I hope it never happens, but if it happens, that they do that and it expands that far, that it will be capable of doing what they're dreaming about.
Through Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Byrne, I'll step in to answer this question because it's really not directed at planning. Generally, you're asking for what's also being covered off in our master servicing plan. We are looking at water, wastewater, how we're going to service lands to the north up to 115, if that's where the GMS, we were basing it on what was approved on the growth management study. So we're sticking with that. Each subdivision in regard to utilities and water, wastewater, we look at external, what they call drainage areas. We look at what the servicing is required for the development and lands to the northwest, east, et cetera. So those will form part of the detailed engineering as it comes forward. At this point in time, RV Anderson has been our consultant looking at water, wastewater, and we're in the final parts of our study to conclude pipe sizes, things like that. We'll look at that through the detailed engineering. So the utilities, separate issue. I think they are governed by themselves. We're working with them on a site-by-site basis. So we deal with them as the sites come forward. And of course, Hydro One and Enbridge, they have their own course of approval. You have to apply and it's followed through that process. So just on, I don't want to mix the two together. Utilities is one thing, sewer and water is with us. And we are looking at that under the master servicing.
Yeah, and with regards to the future plans or the Planning Act and the OPA with regards to the growth management study, that all of allocations of that are governed under the PPS and the growth plan. So, I mean, there are parts of it that I don't enjoy either, but with regards to allocations, when the county allocates the growth to the municipality, we are legally beholden to find a place and allocate that within our plans for our future. And that has changed from a 2041 to now a 2051 horizon. So that was what was the catalyst for addressing the growth management study is, well, now we have 10 additional years that we need to capture and locate. And under the guise of the current PPS, you need to direct the majority of that growth into your service settlement areas. And the municipality does not have the capacity to create new service settlement areas unless we create plants in other places. But at the time, we only have the one system. So we only have the one service settlement area. And that's why all of the growth or the growth that we have been allocated from the county, from the province, had to be reflected in the plans for the Millbrook settlement area. So just to provide some additional planning background to that. Ms. Ellis, with regards to one of the things that some of, or at least Deputy Mayor Huntley and myself are around for is with regards to the MZO that has been endorsed by previous council with regards to these properties. Can you maybe clarify, maybe even Michael would like to speak to that as well, as to how that endorsement affects the proposal and the recommendations before us today?
Through you, Mayor Graham, to members of council, members of the public. So the ministerial zoning order was approved by the province. Those regulations in that order establish the permitted uses on site and the regulations attached to those uses in terms of lot size, setbacks, permitted uses, etc. So the document in terms of the official plan amendment before you today is really a document that implements and sets the policy framework that recognizes the permitted uses and the regulations that the province has imposed on the subject property.
And because of the provincial endorsement, those are also not subject to appeal. Is that correct?
Through you, Mayor Graham, to members of council, members of the public, that is correct.
Michael, you seem anxious to participate, so I wouldn't want to, you drove all the way here, so I wouldn't want you to have anything held back. Michael.
Oh, certainly. I just wanted to add on just one small thing, just so it's understood what those are, because it's very difficult. First off, minister zoning orders are terribly technical and not fairly easy to understand and interpret. So what I would want to say at a high level, so everyone understands what that framework is that's been set up. If you look at the Highlands development, in essence, most of the provisions for the residential development you're seeing here were lifted from the zoning that was passed by council at that time for that development. So what you're likely to see here on these lots, basically, and what that MZO sets up for from a built form perspective in terms of what it's going to look like, is very much going to be similar to what you saw at Highlands. It's just so everybody can understand what that actually means and what it looks like on the ground.
Thank you for that clarity, Michael. Members of council, other questions? Councilor Byrne?
Through the chair, maybe this isn't relevant today either, but in my notes, it's talking about street lighting and sidewalks, which may come up in another planning meeting, I don't know. But it speculates that on both sides of Street A, it's going to require sidewalks. And the sidewalks are supposed to be matched with the street lighting. Does that require street lighting on both sides of that? Like, is this gonna, I know they're talking about some kind of new technology for dark lighting, whatever the hell that means, I don't know. But are they gonna require street lights on both sides? Because there's sidewalks on both sides, please?
To Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Byrne, we have the requirement of sidewalks on both sides. We haven't seen the final street lighting plan. We are looking at decorative lighting in the subdivision, similar to what we had in the Tower Hill South plan. What we have done on occasion is we've staggered the lighting from one side to the other, depending on the design. But there is a requirement that we do have lighting on the same side as sidewalks. So that is something that we'll take into account when we look at the street lighting plan. That detailed plan has not come forward yet and won't until we get a little further along in the process.
Yeah, and that, in addition to a number of other components, are listed in the draft plan conditions that is attachment 6. So a number of the composition components that are required by the municipality are all outlined in that last final attachment. That isn't something that's reflected at this planning level of the presentation, but it will be something that the township has policies that need to be followed and need to be met and built in according to or in consistency with. That's what I was going for. Thank you for that, Michael. Other questions? If not, we have another, I want to move things along because I know there's a number of members here that might wish to speak to the CSU. With regards to the MZO, thank you for those comments, Ms. Ellis. With regards to that process, I mean, the endorsement of that by the province is really sort of committed the township to this process moving forward. This is sort of an administration portion because of that facility. So thanks to Michael for being here today to answer some of these questions as well, because I know you have the developer at large has already met and exceeded a lot of the requirements for the public consultation process, but because of the amount of changes and obviously the time that's elapsed since those engagements were done, I think it's helpful to have it today. But if there's no other members of council wishing to ask any questions at this time, we do have 4 recommendations with regards to the report, and I'll take a mover and a seconder for those recommendations whenever someone is so compelled. Deputy Mayor Huntley and Councillor Natshaw, any questions with regards to any of the 4 recommendations? I just want to be clear, there are 4, and I will read them just so everyone's aware. That council approved bylaw number 2024-09 to adopt the official plan amendment number 15 to the Township of Cappamonigan, and that the council authorize the submission of the adopted OPA to Peterborough County for review and approval, and that council receive and consider any public comments received on February 2024, and that council support the approval of application 15T-21-005, subject to the draft plan conditions provided in attachment number 6 to this report and any revisions thereto required from the public comment received February 20th, 2024. Moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley, seconded by Councillor Natshaw. All in favor? That is approved. Thank you very much, everyone, for the comments and also for staff and Michael for those answers. And now I'm just going to move my page over. The next report is 8.5 PEB 2024-07 CSU developments, the official plan amendment and plan of subdivision. Ms. Ellis, I'm assuming you're taking the reins for this presentation as well.
Thank you, Mayor Graham, members of council, members of the public and staff. The subdivision being considered with this point in the meeting is the CSU plan of subdivision. This plan of subdivision is located in part of lot 11, concession 5 of the former Cavan Ward. The municipal addresses for the property are currently 787 and 825 Hollis Line. If you could flip to the key map, Carly, that would be great, just so everybody knows the location that we are talking about. Great, thank you. So like the last application, there's a bit of history with this application. So the CSU plan of subdivision was deemed complete by Peterborough County on July 28th of 2021. On July 28th of 2021, planning staff forwarded an email to township staff and council advising of the applications and where information was available. Details about the application have been available on the County of Peterborough website since July 28th of 2021. The official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment applications were deemed complete by the township on October 29th of 2021. Public notice was issued regarding the complete applications, and information on these applications has also been available since October 29th, 2021. Again, on February 22nd of 2022, the applicant made a presentation to council about the MZO for this property as well. Council supported the MZO, and on April 1st, the MZO for these lands was approved by the province. Again, a neighborhood meeting for the official plan amendment and plan of subdivision applications was hosted by the developer on May 18th, 2022. The statutory public meeting was held on August 2nd of 2022. The plan of subdivision before council today is the 4th submission for this plan of subdivision application. Again, the council motion from August of 2022 required an additional opportunity for public comment, and that is what we were providing today. Again, this is not a statutory public meeting, but it is an opportunity to hear public comment. Notice of this meeting was published in the Millbrook Times in the February 2024 edition. Notice was also published on the township's website. And if you could flip one more page to the plan of subdivision, we'll get into the details. So with this plan of subdivision, it involves about 49.2 hectares of land with approximately 558 meters of frontage on Falls Line West. This proposal consists of 610 residential units. 379 are single detached dwellings. There's 141 street townhouses and 90 units in a mixed use building. And again, the mixed use building is in the northwest corner of the property. That would be at the top left-hand corner of the property. With this application, there are 2 stormwater management blocks. There's 1 natural heritage system block at the south end. There are 3 parkland blocks, 1 immediately south of the mixed-use commercial block at the northwest corner, and the linear parkland block along the east side of the property, which coincides with the railway bed area. There's also 3 walkway blocks and 2 road widening blocks set aside. Street G will provide access directly to Fallis Line West and Pristine Trail. And Pristine Trail, if you follow that through the Tower Hill South subdivision, does provide access directly to Fallis Line as well. This subdivision will be serviced with municipal piped water and wastewater services. Like the last application, an official plan amendment is required to permit the consideration of this plan of subdivision. Again, the official plan amendment will realign the land use designations and add an exception policy to specify that the regulations of the MZO will guide development on the subject lands. Similar to the last application, the official plan amendment will permit a maximum height of 4 stories for the mixed use building. Development in the community commercial designation will be in accordance with the regulations in the MZO. Additional commercial uses like banks, financial institutions, liquor stores, post offices, etc., will be permitted in this subdivision. The general development policy to the community commercial designation will not apply. And the Millbrook settlement area is being expanded. There are mapping changes to go with this official plan amendment. Again, Carly, if you could scroll down to the colored maps. Members of the public and members of council can see that Schedule A1 is being amended by changing the land use designations on a portion of the property from agricultural to residential and community commercial. The natural core designation is also being aligned with the limits of the MZO. And a text box is being added to reference section 4.1.8C. And the next map is Schedule A, which is the land use schedule for the township of Cabamonaghan. With this mapping change, a portion of the property will be redesignated from agricultural to the Millbrook settlement area, which will expand the settlement area, and we will add a text box to reference the same section 4.18C. As with the last application, the official plan amendment application and plan of subdivision application were evaluated in accordance with the PPS, the growth plan, the county official plan, the township official plan, and staff are satisfied that the applications conform to that policy framework. Like the last application, we did receive comments by email from Marion Thompson and Jane Zednick, and we've talked about them through the last application. The comments they sent were 1 comment for both applications, so I'm not going to revisit those technical comments. As I've said before, they will be responded to from RVA in terms of the technical questions about servicing. With this application, the township also received a written submission from the Baxter Creek Watershed Alliance. In that submission, they indicated they're not opposed to development, but are opposed to development that does not fully consider municipal and provincial planning policies and guidelines designed to limit negative environmental impacts and hazards to people, property, and the natural environment. Primarily, they are concerned about the impacts from the development on the Coldwater, Trout Creek, locally named Jail Creek, and downstream flooding. Just so you know, the head wall for the outlet of the stormwater, of the southern swim pond, of the stormwater management pond, is located 30 meters from the wetland boundary. And the location of the head wall provides an indirect outlet to the creek system, allowing the water to cool before entering the creek. Post-development will be controlled through the stormwater management system. And one of our draft plan conditions requires detailed design of the stormwater system to the satisfaction of the township, Otonabee Conservation, and Peterborough County. So similar to the last application, draft plan conditions have been developed by township staff in conjunction with input from the developer's planning consultant. And those proposed draft plan conditions are included in attachment number 5. And the conditions, again, have all the standard requirements in terms of servicing, park and environmental lands, external services, roads, sidewalks, street lighting, etc. If approved by council, the township will ask the county of Peterborough to impose the conditions on the draft approval of the subdivision, and any condition of draft plan approval will have to be satisfied by the applicant prior to the final approval of the plan of subdivision. So having said all of that, the recommendations before council today are that council approve bylaw number 2024-10 to adopt official plan amendment number 16 to the township of Cavan Monaghan official plan. Secondly, that the council authorize the submission of the adopted official plan amendment to Peterborough County for review and approval. Thirdly, that council receive and consider any public comments received on February 20th, 2024. And lastly, that council support the approval of application 15T21007, subject to the draft plan conditions provided in attachment. It should say 5. I'm sorry, there's a typo. It says 6 on the plan, but it should say 5 to this report, and any revisions thereto required from public comment received on February 20th, 2024.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. So same process as before. Now that the results have been presented, we want to give members of the public an opportunity to provide comments. So the lectern is open. Again, name and address, and then we'll be happy to receive your comments as a council.
Mayor and members of council and guests, my name is Chris Grayson. I live at 44 McGuire Drive in Millbrook, and I'm a new resident of about 6 years now. So thank you for the opportunity to present some questions and commentary. There's 3 members of our board from Baxter Creek Watershed here today. 2 of us will be doing a brief question and introduction. I'm the chair of the board of Baxter Creek Watershed, a not-for-profit organization within the village of Cavan Monaghan. We're a group, and Karen mentioned a couple of things from our letter, but Baxter Creek Watershed Alliance, for those that aren't aware, is a community group that has come together to protect and enhance the Baxter Creek Watershed region. We were formed officially in November of 21. And as mentioned, we are not opposed to development, but we do want to promote development that properly considers the municipal and planning policies and guidelines and uses science and evidence to limit the negative impacts of hazards to people, properties, and natural environments. The Baxter Creek Watershed Alliance is a voice of our community, and it values the values of our community values associated with cold water streams, the rich trout habitat, and all the natural heritage that comes with that. We, the board, have several questions and concerns. Graham Whitelaw, I would like to introduce. He's going to speak to those questions, but we appreciate the opportunity to have input into a very serious conversation in this community. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. My name's Graham Whitelaw. I live at 29 Brookside Street in Millbrook. Been here about 2.5 years, and have been with Baxter Creek for about 1.5 years. I really thank you for this additional public comment. It's really helped out our association in managing to get our comments to you, so that's much appreciated. And our first concern regards a lack of floodplain analysis associated with the development and the sub-watershed known as Jail Creek that flows into Baxter Creek. The OP section 8.4, we believe, gives the municipality the ability to require a floodplain analysis. The Jail Creek flows behind homes on Brookside and McGuire, past the Millbrook Manor Seniors Residence and into Baxter Creek. We are asking that council carry out a peer review of the stormwater management approach for the subdivision, specifically looking at future flows in the Jail Creek. We're concerned as several homes on Brookside were mapped within the floodplain, and based on new information, now mapped just outside the flood boundary. The proposed subdivision design also includes 3 unconstrained points of flow from the subdivision. We also believe the proposed stormwater ponds have the potential to intersect groundwater, and for this groundwater to continuously flow from the subdivision down the Jail Creek. We believe this is the situation that has occurred at the Highlands stormwater ponds. There is now a continuous flow of water from these ponds down the drainage ditch to Baxter Creek. We're also concerned about severe weather associated with our changing climate. So based on these issues, we ask that a peer review be carried out of the proposed stormwater plans for the subdivision to determine if a floodplain analysis is warranted. Our second concern deals with the community value of cold water streams and trout. Our question is, has the design of the subdivision addressed protection of the Jail Creek so it can continue into the future as a cold water stream with trout? How have these values been considered, specifically water temperature, water chemistry, and sedimentation? Was exfiltration infiltration system technology like that used in some Etobicoke developments considered? We're asking council to consider the best technology that can be applied to subdivision development in this case, and also for future development in Cavan Monaghan. Our third concern arose based on LiDAR terrain analysis that our association carried out for this development and the Jail Creek subwatershed. Among the things LiDAR can show are detailed terrain conditions, including both natural and human influences on terrain. So with this analysis, we could see depressions on the landscape or where unstable banks may have eroded over time. So through our GIS program, we observed that the old rail bed heading from Station Trail Park and intersecting the Jail Creek on the forested portion of the property shows some erosion that may be causing sedimentation. So our question is, did the analysis of stormwater flows from the subdivision consider the potential of increased sedimentation into the Jail Creek and impact on trout and trout habitat in the creek from this old limestone culvert? And I'm not sure about this. This may not be in this current iteration of the proposal, but we understand that a micro sewage treatment plant was part of the proposal. We're hoping that this has been dropped for reasons of impacts to Jail Creek and also just efficient rollout of infrastructure in Millbrook using the centralized treatment plant. So our final comment deals specifically with Jail Creek and generally about residential development in Cavan Monaghan. Our municipality has some of the best cold water creeks with trout habitat in Southern Ontario, as demonstrated by ongoing Trout Unlimited monitoring. So the association's asking Cavan Monaghan to prioritize these values and ensure that designs consider trout habitat so that development does not turn cold water creeks and streams like Jail Creek into drains. We hope that housing and environmental values, including cold water streams and trout, can coexist. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for those comments, Graham. I'm going to look to you, probably Karen, and then maybe Michael, or maybe even Wayne, who knows? We'll get the whole crew on it. With regards to some of those comments, you, I think, alluded to them in the report, Karen, about one with regards to the stormwater management pond and the cooling process, but I'll let the three of you provide some sort of commentary with regards to the questions posed.
Through you, Mayor, to members of council, members of the public, I will defer commenting on stormwater management to members of staff and the consultant who have way more information and expertise in stormwater management than I do.
Through Mr. Mayor, just following up on Ms. Ellis's comments there, the issue of the stormwater management is reviewed both internally and by ORCA. I think in conjunction with the Baxter Creek Association, the issue of the coolness or cooling of the water certainly can be taken into account. We have reached out to peer review consultants to involve them in that type of review and certainly can do in this case in conjunction with ORCA. So I would take the comments and I would basically deal with them as a draft plan condition, and that we would look at some of the comments we received today and review them cooperatively with ORCA and with the possibility of a peer review by Cambion or a consultant of that nature. So I don't really have a particular issue. I think the comments are fair and I think we should take them into account.
Michael, anything to add?
Not much beyond what Wayne said. Again, simple planner here. I'll defer to the engineer on this one.
So I'm just looking to the clerk. So with regards to incorporating that into the draft plan conditions, there's no direct, like that can be considered with regards to receiving the comments from the public. We don't need a specific motion. It can just be simply accommodated by adding it to that list of projects. So just so everyone's aware, we don't need a motion for that. That's just going to be added to the list based on the comments by Mr. Hancock. Okay, great. Other questions from the audience? Going once.
Malcolm Byard, 889 Highway 7A, Calvin. Just to reiterate what I spoke to on the previous proposal, that the lack of park space in this plan is not enough to accommodate a cultural event or a sporting event. And I don't want to speak much to that because I did previously, but I just wanted to know that there's a public opposition and that council should consider expanding the park space to accommodate us a cultural or sporting event space in this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Still open for members of the public? Going once. Going twice. Okay. With that, we'll move to the consideration of the report. Much similar process as last time, but members of council having questions with regards to this report? Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair, Michael, I don't know if I'm allowed to ask this even, but I'm trying to figure out the southwest corner of the subject land. I'm gonna guess that you don't own that piece that's carved out, that little corner piece, but I am trying to figure out where the actual boundaries for the hamlet designation of Millbrook are going to follow, and if they follow that cutout, or is there some thing I'm missing here? Please, thank you.
Happy to take that. Yeah, it's going to involve a little bit of hopefully good explanation mixed with some mapping. So if you look at the site as it is now, and you'll notice in the southern portion of the site, there's nothing, and that's where you're having your 33% of the site conveyed as natural heritage. So that southern portion of the site, strangely enough, is actually in the current settlement area of Millbrook. So more or less the boundary of Millbrook right now, if I could say it this way, is the north-south rail trail, which is on the eastern portion of the site, as well as the natural heritage portion. Now, I'll say that the part of the OPA is bringing that into the settlement area. It's already been brought into the settlement area per the county's processes. So this is kind of a catch-up process at this point. Now, granted, that's also waiting, as many OPs are right now, at the province for final approval. But in a lot of ways, addition of that portion of the site is kind of a catch-up game at this point, bringing it into the township or the Millbrook settlement area. So you can see here, everything green there is already in the settlement area, and a portion of the yellow on the eastern portion of the site is already in the settlement area.
Thank you, Michael. Other questions, members of council?
Sorry, I'm having trouble following the map. Do you have a laser pointer? Because you said the parts that are green. I see a lot of parts that are green. Which specifically are you referring to?
Sorry about that, and I do apologize. So you can see the portion, the subject site is outlined in red. If you're starting from that point, in essence, everything that's green is in the settlement area already. Again, we're not proposing to develop on that area. That area is going to stay natural core and not going to be developed upon. But that was a large portion of the site that was already in the settlement area.
Councilor Byrne?
Through the chair, with the help of Carly. So that little cutout to the south, come lower on the west corner, that piece directly to the left or right, I would go west from there. Is that part of the settlement area now too, or not?
The entire site after this application would be in the settlement area. The triangular piece at the south will be in the settlement area, but conveyed to the township and protected for natural heritage. That's actually where the rail trail kind of runs up through there. So it'll be presumably an informal trail that remains coming up through there until you get to the limits of where, you know, the residential lotting starts in the draft plan. And that's where you see, if you go back to the draft plan, that north-south park block that'll connect you up to County Road 10 and then to the trails that will start on the north side through the Highlands development. Just to the park point, you can see actually where we hit County Road 10, we have a second swim block, but we've actually widened out that trail connection there. And Malcolm, to your point, that is one of the places where we actually created a bigger park block, kind of at the culmination of the trail network and kind of at the same time adjacent to a storm pond to really kind of try to create a larger area for recreational purposes. So you'll see right at the top there where we kind of widened it out. And I think that's on an acreage basis, sorry, I did the calculation, 2.6 acres, that area. So not insubstantial, although again, when you look at a plan on this scale, sometimes something that's relatively large can still look small when you're looking at such a large piece of land.
Thank you for that, Michael. Counselor Byrne?
Through the chair, Carly, if you go back to that last map, right there, if you went to the very west boundary of the subject property, the line that goes north-south, and followed it straight down into the village of Millbrook, where is that hamlet designation? Like, that's what I'm trying to figure out. So, if you go to the subject property right there where, yes, that line there to the west in the world, there's a north-south boundary of the subject property. Does the hamlet designation go straight south down that line all the way into what would be the back of Baxter Creek subdivision?
Ms. Ellis? Oh, sorry.
Through you, Mayor Graham, to Councillor Byrne, the other council members and members of the public. So currently in the township's official plan, the area that is not part of this property but is southwest of the property is not noted on the schedules as being part of the Millbrook settlement area. But through a settlement of an appeal with the plan, there was a settlement that indicated if the property owner could prove that the lands could be developed, then the adjacent land use designation would apply, which is an urban designation. So we are currently in the throes of considering a plan of subdivision application on those lands. Again, it has been going on for a number of years. It is environmentally significant and there's a lot of details to be worked out, but technically, for all intents and purposes, yes, it is in the Millbrook settlement area, or it will be.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Other questions, members of council, with regards to the report? Seeing none, similar to before, we have 4 recommendations. I will read them aloud. The council approve bylaw number 2024-10 to adopt the official plan amendment number 16 to the township of Captain and the council authorize the submission of the adopted official plan amendment to Peterborough County for review and approval. And that council receive and consider any public comments received on February 20th, 24, and that council support the approval of application 15T-21 007, subject to the draft plan conditions provided in attachment 5 to this report and any revisions thereto required from the public comment received February 20th, 2024. Any questions with regards to those recommendations? If not, moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley, seconded by Councillor Natchoff. All in favor? That is approved. Thanks everyone for their thoughtful comments, and thanks for everyone for following the processes and whatnot. It was a very enjoyed that. We need a resolution to close the meeting for public input. Councillor Byrne, Deputy Mayor Huntley, all in favor? That is approved. Seeing as we've concluded that, I think we're going to take a 5-minute recess, just allow everyone to clear out, and then we'll reconvene the meeting. Thank you. All right, we will now reconvene the meeting of February 20th, 2024. We are at 9.1 in our agenda, the minutes of the regular meeting held February 5th, 2024. Any concerns about those minutes? If not, we'll take a motion and a seconder to approve as presented. Councillor Byrne, Deputy Mayor Huntley, all in favor? Those are approved. Minutes from committees and boards. We have 10.1 Municipal Revitalization Heritage Advisory Committee meeting minutes of June 15th, September 21st, and October 10th. Be approved as presented. Moved by Councillor Edgerton, Councillor Natchoff, all in favor? Those are approved. We are now at the reports. Matt, you are here to present the proposed telecommunications tower 574 Carmel Line.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and members of council, members of the public. Before you is planning report PEB 2024-08 regarding the installation of a telecommunications tower at 574 Carmel Line. For clarity, telecommunication towers are a federal responsibility and regulated by Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada. Tower applications are not regulated under the Planning Act or other provincial legislations. Building permits from the township are also not required. The township's responsibility is to follow the township antenna policy and to have regard for township official plans. First question staff will ask regarding towers is to demonstrate the need of the project and if there are no other alternatives. In the report from Spectra Point Incorporated, they note that the network planning and engineering departments have become aware of coverage deficiencies within the general area of Carmel Line. The report continues that Rogers Communication Inc. would like to utilize the proposed site location to provide high-quality network coverage and capacities and products and services such as cellular phones and wireless internet in the surrounding area. The site, as proposed, will achieve the necessary engineering coverage objectives for the network. The proposed location will enhance much relied upon communication services in the area for such as EMS response, fire, and police. Planning staff are reliant on Spectra Point to accurately communicate and present future telecommunication needs for the area. The attachment in the report illustrates the gap in coverage for the area as provided by Spectra Point. Planning staff are of the opinion that the project has met the intent of township policies, and planning report PEB 2024-08 presents the following recommendations. Firstly, the council receive planning report PEB 2024-08 for information. Secondly, the council direct planning staff to issue a letter of concurrence to Spectra Point on behalf of Rogers Communication Inc. for the construction of a guide tower telecommunications structure with the associated radio equipment cabinet on lands located at 574 Carmel Line, because the project satisfies the intent of township policies regarding the siting of new telecommunication facilities. And thirdly, that the statement of concurrence include the following matters for consideration by the proponent and Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada. A, the proposed roadworks on Carmel Line to be completed to the satisfaction of Township Public Works Department, and the extension of Carmel Line is assumed into the township road system. B, a sediment erosion control plan prepared by a qualified professional submitted to and accepted by the township prior to any on-site activities. C, the use of tower lighting reduces the harm to migratory birds. And D, that the letter of concurrence has a 3-year expiration date. Spectra Point completed the public consultation in accordance with the requirements of Township of Cabot-Monaghan antenna policy. An advertisement was placed in the Peterborough This Week newspaper. Information packages were mailed to the 12 property owners within 274.5 meters of the tower base. One letter from a resident and a petition with 15 signatures were received by the township and Spectra Point. The concerns addressed included health concerns and proximity to other towers. 3 new emails have been received most recently after this report was written in opposition. The concerns addressed included coverage needs, health concerns, migratory bird impacts, and concerns regarding addressing the official plan policies. No other letters or phone calls were received in support or opposition. Comments on health impacts will be addressed by Health Canada. Comments on migratory bird impacts may be addressed by the recommended lighting addition. And regarding the concerns of addressing township official plan policies and policies of the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan, Section 41(5)(a) of the Oak Ridges Moraine Conservation Plan does permit infrastructure, which includes telecommunication towers, in the natural core and to cross natural heritage features if the applicant has demonstrated the need for the project and that there are no reasonable alternatives. The design and construction of the tower are in the federal purview. And Spectra Point did reply to the first submitted email, was not able to reply to the persons listed on the petition because the contact information was not included. and the public consultation completed by Spectra Point has satisfied the township requirements for consultation on telecommunication towers projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt, for that summation and the presentation of the report. Just for clarity with regards to the last comment, with the more recent receiving of the emails or questions for information, Spectra Point is still going to fulfill their obligations of returning those correspondences as well. I haven't been copied in as many as other applications that we've seen. I just wanted to ensure that Spectra Point is committed to fulfilling their responses to those questions or any details of information being requested by the resident.
To you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council and public, the period of public consultation did close on October 17th, 2023. And so since then, I believe they don't have to get back to them, but we certainly can.
Yeah, through you, if we could just simply request that they follow up with those. I know that the window has closed and obviously the consideration, with regards to the report before us there'll be a decision one way or the other in a few matter of moments. But with regards to that, if we could just simply request, like not changing anything with regards to this, I know we can't demand, but if they would be express our consideration for that, I think it would be appreciative. Other questions, members of council? Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair, I raised this issue way back last year at the public meetings and with Spectra personally. I get it. The federal government is throwing money at this project because it has good PR value. The big problem I have with that concept is it looks like they've fallen down again because Rogers has already signed an agreement a couple of years ago to get on a tower. And I don't know how many feet away it would be, but just up Carmel Line to the east. An agreement was made. The location was laid out. I'm sure somebody on staff must have been aware of it at one point or whatever. Anyways, it was going to be a shared tower. It was going to be shorter. It was going to be in a more visible area, so there wasn't going to be tree obstructions. And it was also in an area where the resident that was willing to host that tower had already approached all his significant neighbors in the general area that were all in agreement. I'm having a hard time figuring out, other than the fact that the federal government is going to hand Rogers some free money to build their own tower rather than have to pay rent on somebody else's tower, which is my big concern in Mount Pleasant at the time. I'm just wondering where that agreement stands and how much staff was aware of that and why they can justify this higher tower at the edge of Ganaraska in a forested area. I'm having trouble with that.
Through you, Mayor Graham, to Councillor Byrne and members of council. I'm going to answer this question because I was here at the time when that other tower was being considered and Matt was not. So I can tell you in all honesty that we have been on Spectra Point about co-location on that tower from the very beginning. We have pushed and pushed and pushed, and they have consistently said and provided the coverage mapping that that tower does not provide the coverage they need into the Ganaraska forest. So that's why they need this tower. Through the process of learning more and more about communication towers, apparently the tower that is proposed on Carmel Line East is a tower that Rogers could connect to, but we have no knowledge that they have signed a lease agreement on that. Apparently it's a private, it's not a Rogers site, it's a site that people could co-locate on, but Rogers has not indicated that site is suitable to provide the coverage they need, particularly into the Ganaraska forest.
Follow up, Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair, please. So what it appears to me, and I'm not pretending to be anything special, but they already signed an agreement to go on that. It was going to be owned by somebody else. They were going to have to pay rent. And that was prior to the government's announcement that they're going to throw all this money for new towers. In your dialogue with Spectra, I'm guessing that whatever point they think they're going to locate this tower at the end of Carmel Drive has a radius around it that would have been in their sweet spot, because that's what they used to refer to in Mount Pleasant. The place that I'm talking about is to the east, probably less than a mile, but I don't know the number of feet. But, and they've already signed an agreement 2 or 3 years ago to proceed with that. I just wonder how they come up with justification for doing this. That's my big concern. And then the other one quick question I'll ask for Wayne Hancock. If this is going to be a cul-de-sac, if they go ahead with this, is it going to be a paved cul-de-sac like we've done with all the other cul-de-sacs in the township over the last several years? Or what's going to happen down there?
Through you, Mayor Graham, and to Councillor Byrne and members of council. So with regard to the issue of whether Rogers has signed an agreement with the tower on Carmel Line East, I have no knowledge of that. All I know is we had a proposal for a telecommunication tower at that location. We followed the antenna policy. It was circulated as per the requirements of the township. There was one minor objection, which was related to health concerns, which are Health Canada issues, so it was not brought before council. We provided a letter of concurrence, but no action, to the best of my knowledge, has occurred on that tower. When we did pre-consultation for the tower we are speaking about today, we asked about co-location. We are on that like mad dogs. Like, it is our first comment always. We recognize the location of that approval, how close it is. But Rogers has consistently indicated to us that it does not provide the coverage it requires in the Ganaraska Forest region. They provide the coverage mapping. They are the experts. Towers, is our understanding, cost about $1 million a pop. So it's unlikely that they are going to spend $1 million just because they don't want to pay rent. But it's their project. We are here to process their application in accordance with the antenna policy. And that's how we got here today, because we have objections on a number of levels.
To Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Byrne, in regard to the road construction, we did have an engineering submission from Davenport Engineering that did indicate a cul-de-sac. The cul-de-sac was to be built in kind, which is granular B and granular A. We are waiting for a legal survey of that part of the property. We don't have that complete as yet. We did get a draft and we had sent it back so we are waiting for the legal survey and for a certificate from the engineer on completion of the work. So the cul-de-sac is to be put in place and it is to be of a gravel surface.
Thank you, Mr. Hancock, for that. Other questions, members of council? Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair, if it does turn out that Rogers misrepresented themselves with this other possibility of co-sharing in a location that people are amenable to it being there, does that give use any flexibility on this concurrence? And I understand it's a federal jurisdiction and I understand all the other stuff about it. But if somebody's lying to me, I kind of like to see there be some kind of recourse.
So we have no access to proprietary information and we really want to avoid making claims when we don't have actual data with regards to those. Rogers is the entity that it is and the federal government is the entity that it is, and this is their jurisdiction and we have our small role to play, and it doesn't change with regards to who says what. It really is simply an unfortunate reality that we're working through, and this is our role and our function. So other questions with regards to the report? If not, there are 1, 2, 3 recommendations and 4 parts of recommendation number 3. If Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair, bear with me. Is there any reason why you would not request that to be pavement, since we've spent a lot of money paving most of the other cul-de-sacs? I think we're all caught up actually in the township because of the snow removal and the wear and tear on a gravel hardtop surface.
Through to Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Byrne, the requirement, actually the plan for the cul-de-sac came forward about 3 years ago. At the time, the road surface was gravel. Our requirement is to build in kind, so we weren't requiring it to be a paved cul-de-sac in that area. It is a very low traffic and really only accommodated the access to this property and the tower. So our standard at the time was 12 inches of granular B, 6 of A. We were not requiring a hard top and we weren't foreseeing hard top to be used there for that project. So that was our requirement at the time.
Thank you, Mr. Hancock. Seeing no other questions with regards to the three recommendations and sub 4 recommendations for opportunity 3, how is council feeling? If not, we'll look for a mover and a seconder for, I mean, they're all the same part of the process. That is, you know, as I've just defined our role, it's very medial and at best, and that's for better or for worse, but looking for council for a mover and a seconder with regards to recommendations, moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley, seconded by. I will second the recommendation. All in favor of the recommendations? That is failed. How would council like to proceed with regards to the report? Looking for a motion. Council Byrne.
I have no idea how to word this, phrase this or whatever, but is it possible for staff to go back and discuss why the dynamics of no, it's not even an option, so I don't know what motion to make in front of you.
As I alluded to in the discussion, the issue is a statement. What we need to provide from our process is the fact that a letter of concurrence is that they've regarded our process. It has no bearing on any other components or asking or imposing. We have no role to impose anything other than the request that they follow and consider our proposals and any requests therein. That's it. There is no leverage or no jurisdictional purview that we have for this whatsoever. So, like I said, to me, this is book work, but I'm not sure exactly how, like I said, I guess you could make a motion of non-concurrence, but you won't have any grounds to do that. There won't be any justification, so we could do that if that's what the intention is, but I don't think that will disrupt the process. It'll simply come back in another few months with another similar request, as it's been done in other jurisdictions. But yeah. Deputy Mayor Huntley.
Through you, Chair, I don't know, trying to get ourselves out of this one, but is there any way this report potentially could come back after we've updated our antenna policy? That's maybe help the situation.
Through you, we could certainly defer the report, but any new policy won't apply to an application that's already under consideration. I mean, you can't retroactively impose requirements on a submission. So like I said, all of them have been fulfilled at this point. Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair, for my clarity then, could I get the actual date of the application for this particular cell tower and when it was submitted, please?
Sorry, to you, Mr. Mayor, members of the public, or Councilor Byrne, yes, I'll get that too.
Councilor Natchow.
Through you, Chair, while I can greatly appreciate the difficulties that this presents us by not passing concurrence with this, my vote against would just strictly be a reflection of the feedback I've received from the constituents in my ward. And I think if alternative opportunities were available, which it doesn't seem that that is the case, obviously federally mandated, our hands are somewhat tied to all of this. So my vote is just strictly a representation of the people in my community and their opposition to this tower. So if this is what it takes to delay the process, then this is what's going to have to happen on my behalf.
Ms. Page, you might want to provide some clarity with regards to legally.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to yourself and the rest of council, I am not familiar with the process if they do not support a letter of concurrence. So I don't know if we're better to defer and not make a position due to legalities, I'm assuming is what you're insinuating, unless Ms. Ellis or Mr. Wilkinson can speak better to it. Otherwise, I would just say that you would defer the report and have staff follow up with what the ramifications are of not sending a letter of support of concurrence.
Ms. Hurley.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Karen, have we ever not supported a cell tower by sending a letter of non-concurrence? And if so, do you know what would happen if we did do that, or if you have any background on that? Thank you.
Through you, Mayor Graham, members of council, to Ms. Hurley. to the best of my knowledge, we have never not sent a letter of concurrence. The letter of concurrence is a fairly recent development with the feds. We have processed a number of cell tower proposals over the years. Many of them have been private. Not all of them have been built. But at that time, a report came to council. Council agreed, and that was the end of it. There's no site plan approval. There's no nothing. I think if council chooses not to go forward today, we can certainly come back with a report saying this is what happens. I believe what happens if we don't issue a letter of concurrence, Rogers can still go forward with their application to ISED, and they can review the information and make a decision even without the township concurrence.
Councilor Murray.
Through the chair, with that information, I have no problem making a motion that we defer today's discussion until some point in the future, whatever staff wants to pick for a date. And we can try to find out some more information in between then and now.
Is there any recommendations or suggestions for a timeline? I think the issue that I have is having done the due diligence for the previous consideration of the cell tower. I think it's I don't know if there's a requirement on the municipality from a timeline standpoint to provide a letter of either concurrence or non-concurrence. So that would be point one that we need to check in if we are deferring the report. The second point is I believe they will move forward without it. I think there's always a preference that there is one letter one way or the other with regards to the policies. But even in the issues or instances that I've researched that are only a handful in the entire country where councils have provided a letter of non-concurrence, I don't believe any of those instances have resulted in a tower not being constructed within a 3 to 5 year period. So because the Supreme Court has ruled this and made it very clear about the authority that the federal government has over this realm, so to speak. Does anyone familiar, Ms. Hurley, with regards to that timeline constraint?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I prefer if we did not have a timeline at this time, but we defer and seek legal with regards to Ms. Ellis's report if we were doing a non-concurrence. We would bring that back, given our timeline, depending upon our legal counsel, but would bring it back as soon as possible. But at this time, I can't give you a date for sure.
Is the cost of doing that legal review something that we'll need to adjust the budget, which is coming up and won't be something reflected in the plans for the township? Obviously, it costs thousands of dollars. So I just want to make sure that we're not missing one thing for another.
Mr. Mayor, that's a really good question. There is identified legal counsel funds that are identified in my budget. All legal goes through my budget, which is true. And we do have a little bit of, obviously we guesstimate on that. I'm sure that this one will not be too big, but at the same time, every time we go to legal, I never know where we're getting ourselves into, but at the same time, I'm not sure about this one. There are others that I possibly could not answer, but this one I'm not sure at this time. But it is identified. There is monies in my budget to be able to do that type of investigation.
Okay. I think there was rumors about motion, Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair, yes, I'll make the motion, but before we do that, please, I hate giving the lawyers any more money than they're already stealing from the taxpayer. Is there any way we can defer this, that I would get some time to inquire a little bit more? Because I thought in our previous dialogue last year that there was a certain requirement from the federal government that they justify not co-sharing, and I may have that wrong, but if not, I'm willing to make the motion to defer.
Yeah, the direction with regards to the federal, how I interpret what has been the map is the real keystone piece when it comes to the coverage. The federal government has mandated as a part of the contract with Rogers that they create the coverage and reach the coverage requirement of, I think it's 95% of the total area. And so the map is what says, well, based on their information and their technology, we can't meet the coverage target with that location. That is the fulfillment of their legal obligation from a federal standpoint. We use our proprietary, they use their proprietary information to say, hey, this is what the coverage would look like with this opportunity and this technology, and this is what it would be with the other. And they're, like I said, no one here is an expert with regards to those coverage map, and it is proprietary information, but that would be there, if they hadn't provided that information and that mapping, then that would be a justification for a letter of non-concurrence, because we haven't seen, and there hasn't been a demonstration that it is concurrent with policies, which staff have already mentioned. There's been multiple requests and, statements that say by far our preferred option is a co-location. And they have routinely and repeatedly suggested that that is not an option to meet the now required surface or service coverage that they are required to meet. And that is why we're seeing a lot more of these applications fast and furious, because there are time constraints on their need to fulfill that coverage area. So that's my understanding. I hope that helps. Councillor Barron.
Through the chair on that note, so the last cell tower or just north of Mount Pleasant, it gave me some of that data. It gave me the sweet spot. It gave me the radius. They'd gone to people that they wanted to locate on prior to, and they refused it. This land of Rocas, they're willing to accept the rent. They don't live there, so it's not an impact to them. But if that information had been presented to me today, and that other location falls within that so-called radius that their mapping puts out that I saw in the Mount Pleasant Institute, and it falls within it, how can they make claim that they couldn't locate there? Is my only wonder.
Ms. Ellis, care to venture into that one?
Through you, Mayor Graham, to Councillor Byrne, members of council and staff. I don't have the map in front of me, I'm sorry, but we did ask them to provide the coverage map. And I think with the coverage map, you'll see that with the location on Carmel Line East, they do not get the required coverage in the Ganaraska Forest that they are looking for. And Mayor Graham is correct. To the best of my knowledge, the federal government also has a policy that co-location is a #1 priority. And so notwithstanding what council decides today about this proposal, or 2 weeks from now, whatever the date is, the federal government will be checking the information to ensure that there is no co-location opportunity.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. Councillor Nacho.
Through you, would it be possible then we could defer this for a vote 2 weeks from now, so that it would allow me more time so that I could individually meet with the people immediately affected by this area? I have had a numerous amount of the constituents, even though it is a small rural side road, and have a better opportunity to speak with them and try to maybe better articulate the fact that this is a federally mandated situation, and that although my opposition is strong against it and in support of those people, that I'd at least have this chance to communicate better with them, and maybe we could revisit this in a couple of weeks.
I think regardless of the catalyst for it, I think the motion that's been rumored to be on the floor, but I don't believe it's been seconded yet, but that might be where we're going with Councillor Nanchoff, that it's just a simple defer. I mean, staff will do their due diligence and try to provide information on either of those two, and council is welcome to do whatever initiatives they would like to undertake in the meantime, but we will all be told when it comes up on the agenda, with the week prior, that will be on the agenda for then, but it probably won't be with the amount of things coming down the pipeline in 2 weeks. It might be in 4 or 6, but we also need to check on what our requirement is from a response standpoint from the township. That will need to be done anyways, and that'll probably dictate when it comes back on the agenda, rather than, because there won't be any new additions to the report unless Spectra has other information to provide at the time. So hopefully that's clarifying. Ms. Hurley would like to make a comment.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, if council wishes to defer this report, staff will take this and we will seek advice, whether it's legal or clarification pertaining to the federal government. It doesn't really matter in that aspect. What I'm saying is we're only going to seek that clarification on how we bring that report back, and what the ramifications could be. Okay. We're not getting into more public conversation or anything like that. It's just based on a non-concurrence. What does that mean?
Okay, Ms. Page?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to yourself and the rest of council, I just would like to clarify the motion before we call a vote, if that's okay, to make sure we're all on the same page. Not just Miss Page.
I'll go to Counselor Byrne for the just clarity with regards to his motion, and then we'll put it on the floor and go from there, if that's okay. Counselor Byrne?
Through the chair, I'd like to move that we as a township defer this concurrence for a period of at least 2 weeks till announced next council meeting. If there's some clarity or guidance that can be assisted without wasting a lot of taxpayers' money on a lawyer. And just give us a little time to process this, please.
So for clarity, let's just say defer the report. We all, staff have all of that understanding, so let's just for summation purposes, defer the report.
Through Mayor Graham, can we say that council defer report PEB 2024-08 to allow staff to seek advice and clarification to issue a letter of non-concurrence? And I think to Ms. Hurley's point, I don't think we can commit to 2 weeks to have it back because they'll technically have to have that information to her by Friday.
So what Ms. Page just said by Counselor Byrne, seconded by Counselor Natchoff. That is passed. Very good. Good discussion. We now move on to 11.2 in the agenda, which is Ms. Page while we are on that page.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Along the lines of more good discussion, before you is report corporate services 2024-02 with the recommendation that council direct staff to enter into an agreement with the Peterborough Humane Society for pound keeper services for the township of Cavan Monaghan. As you will see outlined in the report, for the last 30 years, council and staff have offered dog control as well as pound keeper services within the township of Cavan Monaghan. Currently, we do have Deb Haig that does our dog control. And when Deb secures that dog, she needs to take a place when she has that dog. The second we take that dog into our care and control, that dog becomes the municipality's responsibility. So from the area of expertise, staff are recommending that the Peterborough Humane Society is who you go forward with, as they are the experts that have the properly equipped facilities, the in-house services, as well as they're able to accommodate all the dog's needs and requirements. They have the proper suites and situations to address stray dogs, lost dogs, dangerous dogs, and aggressive dogs. They have trained staff that have the expertise to provide the proper animal care that's required. They can provide the proper food needs, veterinarian care for major and minor medical care. They do microchipping, they do vaccinations, and they also have a program after the dog has been in their care and control for 72 hours to put it in some form of an adoption program. A kennel, as it stands today, is generally a facility if you're going away on vacation or you need someone to hold your dog, if you're going to work or you're going away. And that's generally what the kennel has the ability to offer. Should council wish to explore the option of a kennel, all of the other things that we just mentioned that the Humane Society offers, we would have to do an investigation to see what that would look like for a kennel to take it on. So before council, further consideration is that you direct staff to enter into an agreement with the Peterborough Humane Society for pound services.
Thank you for that, Ms. Page, and thank you for staff for doing the extra work on this discussion from the that arose from the budget discussions. Questions, members of council? Councilor Edgerton.
To you, Mr. Mayor. A while ago, the city told us, because we didn't make a nice donation down there, that they would no longer deal with us. Now, all of a sudden, they want to deal with us. What other stuff is charged above and beyond if they have to give the dog rabies shots and all the rest of this stuff? Is there extra charges?
Through Mayor Graham to Councillor Edgerton, no, this would be a fully service for the $12,000. There would be no extra costs.
And Ms. Page, with regards to, I don't know if we know this yet, but I believe there was also, if I'm not mistaken, in the other report that we received from the other Humane Society, there was a year-over-year increase of, was it cost of living or something like that? But was I not mistaken that there is a lower cost increase year-over-year if we commit to a multi-year service for this?
That's correct from what we understand from the draft proposals. 1%, I think, is what's in my head.
Yeah, that was what I was led to believe, that there's a 1% year-over-year increase rather than the cost of living increase that was a part of Northumberland's proposal, which was also more cost effective. Thank you. Questions, members of council? Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair, just to Cindy, I guess it's your department. I I'd love to see some data that justifies the need for this. From the little bit of digging I've done on my own, which is no big deal, but it doesn't look like we've had a lot of occurrences. My understanding is that we're looking at less than a dozen dogs, probably less than a half a dozen dogs in any given calendar year. And most of them, one in the last month that was reported stray, was picked up by the owner within a couple hours off of Facebook. And I hate to say that that worked, but it did. Anyways, I just don't see the justification. What I'm looking at from input I've got, a worst case scenario, I don't understand all the legality of it because it's just a dog, it's a pet. Anyways, instead of getting into some big contract with anybody, is that the potential that we as a township could maybe buy something as simple as a enclosed trailer, small enough to hold 2 dogs if we outfitted it properly with an air conditioner if necessary and a heater if necessary, that could be located at any willing party within the township that wanted to host it for a period of time. And if it got to be too big a chore for them to look after, a new person might be found and the trailer could be parked at that location. Because I really don't see any big need or a real reason to justify even $12,000 with a 1% increase, let alone a $15,000 at, I don't know what the cost of living, I just remember it was said 4% every year, which was going to mean an $18,000+ cost to the taxpayer at the end of the 5-year contract. I don't see the high volume of animals, and if it's rabied, they're going to put it down anyways. There's lots of people in the township that could do that.
Deputy Mayor Huntley, I'll let you go and then I can.
Through you, Chair, I think $1,000 a month for this sort of service is a no-brainer. I think the amount of liability that we would incur from a single dog bite or some sort of disease like parvo or even kennel cough spreading through a kennel or any of these facilities, you'd be spending more than $12,000 really fast in covering those damages. I don't think we should be debating this too much longer. I think that the 12,000 for the year is, really covers us for a service that, maybe we don't want to be providing it, but we have to provide it. And, nobody likes to pay for insurance, but this is insurance. And I'm for this. Thank you.
Yeah, additional comments in regards to what's being discussed here. I mean, the liability is a problem always, but I don't think that's a good excuse. I mean, humane societies exist to provide the gap in this level of service. So I think what we maybe need to decide at maybe next year's budget is if we're going to provide dog collection services at all. Because you really can't or shouldn't be in the business of collecting animals without a safe, secure place to bring them. And if they do require medical attention, which a number of dogs that are picked up do, there is no vet that will touch them or provide you that service for no cost if you don't own the animal. Regardless of municipal clout, I've had conversations with, I think, 3 different clinics, one being an emergency clinic, which would be the one that you would come to, and they would not touch the animal with regards to a municipality bringing it to them. There is processes for this. They also don't want to be in the game of hosting one because, quite frankly, even basic analysis of, as anyone who knows it has an animal that's taken it to an emergency clinic or a vet clinic without insurance, even just inoculations and a basic overview costs you upwards of $1,500 per visit. So this is not like, and that would, the going to some private entity and then trying to negotiate whether it's municipal property or not is a completely different entity that's going to cost us far more than 1 year of these services to establish. And then we're still stuck with not being able to provide any care. And then when should 72 hours elapse and that animal is still there, we have no mechanism to re-adopt it or put it up for adoption. There's no infrastructure for this. So the more we get into this game, the more our costs are going to balloon far in excess, in my opinion, of $12,000. And like I said, if we're not going to be in the dog pickup game, that's a different conversation because then there's a significant budget impact to that. But to be in the game with an individual who's collecting these animals, not having a safe, secure, and place where they can receive medical attention, to me, doesn't make sense. So we're either in the game and thankfully, the Humane Society has, you know, changed the air of its ways a little bit and being open to working with us, whereas before they were not. And it is somewhat of a cost savings in comparative to the Northumberland entity. So I support, I'm happy to see that. I wish it was less and I wish it was a cost per service model, but I know from talking to other members of county council that that is a dying entity, that no business wants to be in that paper service game when it comes to providing these services. So I think there might be one municipality that still has a paper service agreement, and they've already been informed that it's not going to be the way they're going to do it moving forward. Councillor Natchoff?
Thank you, Mayor, through you. First off, I'd like to thank Ms. Page and the staff for all the effort that they put into trying to find an alternative to cost affordable for this. Just a couple of points, just seen through social media, the like groundswell of support for animals, dogs especially. And, you know, if you look on Facebook and the community rallies together when someone's lost a dog or there's a dog that's found on, you know, stray dog kind of thing. I think our community proves that they're very much dog loving and animal loving. I think that for us to provide this service is a reflection of the passion of our community. Second of all, the opportunity now to partner with the Peterborough Humane Society and the new facilities they have available. We're offering the Rolls Royce now of services in Ontario. Having had an opportunity to work with the Humane Society before, during and after the completion of construction, I would feel great to know that any animal is going to be put in their welfare and the quality of service and care that they're going to be made available. I think is to echo Deputy Mayor Huntley's sentiments, $1,000 a month is money well spent for the quality of service that we would be getting.
Okay, Councillor Byrne.
Through the chair. So on my opening remarks to this issue, that's what I was hoping to find was some history, some record of what expenses we've incurred over the last 10 years or whatever you want to pick of the need to justify the existence of this program. I get all the other stuff, but I haven't physically come across any evidence that says that this is a big dilemma. And I'm just hoping that maybe you've had some data. I don't know what the old agreement was with Peterborough Humane Society before they got into their promotional new building, whether we utilized it, whether we ever paid anything to any vet over the course of the last 10 years. I'm just trying to wrap my head around the need.
Ms. Page, would you like to speak to that at all? I'm not sure. And in future, if there is an interest in that sort of information, that is the exact sort of information that you could provide to staff before a meeting so that they could prepare it for you rather than in the meeting when they have no ability to access their databases and do that due diligence just for future notice. Ms. Page.
The previous agreement was a paid per service and it was a $200 and that included everything in it. And so now they don't offer that anymore, back to what Mayor Graham had said, it's a flat fee and it is to pay for the new facility to have the expertise and everything there. And I think to your original comment, I think the 30 years of service that we have provided, it's something, back to what Councillor Natchoff said, is something that shows we do care about our dogs and that if we're going to have somebody take those dogs into our control, they need to be put into a safe shelter.
Thank you, Ms. Page. All right, good discussion. The recommendation in the report is that council direct staff to enter into agreement with Peterborough Humane Society for pound keeper services for the township of Cabmonaghan. Look to council for a mover and a seconder. Councillor Natchoff, Deputy Mayor Huntley, all in favor? That is approved. Thank you, council. Good discussion. Thank you, Ms. Page, and thank you, staff, for doing that additional work on that. We now move on to 11.3 in the agenda, which is the final budget presentation. Ms. Pope, thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, to all of council. This is a consolidated effort of all of our departments, our budget committee team, and of course, to you, council, and meeting with the public as well on January the 25th. I just wanted to do a quick overview of just a couple of the changes that you'll see between the last report and now. As you know, this one now encompasses the December invoices that were received by the time that this report was printed. And therefore, we've found some efficiencies, and I'll explain that in a moment. So at the meeting on the 25th, the additional contribution of $3,300 towards the Old Millbrook School Play shade structure has been added to this draft or this final. The amendment splash pad water features capital budget estimated cost was reduced from 250 down to 230. That's another $20,000 that we were able to reduce in the budget. And then a combined updated departmental budget estimates across the board resulted in about $33,000. I'll give a couple of the larger ones just to encompass those, but we're nearing the end of our solar loan repayments, so we were able to reduce those. The fuel and utilities, some of them come in a tiny bit more and a tiny bit less. So the average across the board, they have been modified according to actuals. In the bylaw department, the rollover was sufficient to fund the 2024 budget because they weren't able to proceed with some of the contracted services there. So we could remove that ask from this budget. And then we matched to update the revenues. So certain areas where the revenues were coming in higher than what we originally anticipated, where it was reasonable, we were able to increase those. So those are the primary pieces that affect that $33,000 consolidated change. In addition, one other thing I'd like to note is normally when I bring forward a budget, I'm bringing in last year's budget amounts. They always, in all drafts, come forward with the total correct. However, we did make one adjustment between the second draft and the final, and it has to do with the allocated insurance. So we have not changed the budget. The budget still remains exactly as per 2023. The only difference is we're now budgeting the insurance primarily under the clerk's department for the municipality. The allegation between departments that we had arbitrarily through the years was getting more and more skewed where it wasn't really representing true data. And it was difficult to answer those questions of council when those questions would come up because, for example, it was number of vehicles per division. It was buildings according to the FIR where they were categorized, and then full-time equivalents for any liability portion, which is just an allocation, but it's really not a great resource. So what we've done, similar to what happens in finance and IT, where all of the IT budget goes through the finance budget. We're now putting primarily the most of the insurance through the clerk's department budget. And the only areas where there's an exception is where the funds are coming from a different source. So they're not for part of the municipal tax base. So for example, water and wastewater. So then of course they're going to pay their own allocated. Building department because it comes through permits, and then library because it comes through levy. But then all the remaining ones are coming through clerks. So you'll note if you're trying to compare between the 2023 that I presented on last draft and this draft, the total still matches, but you'll notice the clerks have gone up, and across the board for the rest of us, we've slightly gone down because of that allocated amount. So those are the primary changes. This budget is bringing forward a 3.4% municipal residential tax rate increase to fund the 2024 operating and capital budgets. And I have that before council. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Poe. A lot of work and a lot of kicks at the can with regards to the budget. I didn't receive any questions or concerns with regards to the budget. I talked to the other members of the finance committee. Didn't hear anything with regards to this final budget presentation, but we will open up the recommendations and the report for comments from council. Questions, comments? If not, we can, like I said, we've all, Councilor Natchoff.
Just a comment. I would like to thank you for all your hard work. You've done a great job as well, working with the other council members just to identify priorities and staff, of course. Really good job. This is not easy work and you guys made it look easy. So good work.
Thank you for those words, Councilor Natchoff. And just to correct Kimberly, because I never get to do it, I believe we're at 3.3997% now that we can take that 3,000 out of the Humane Society allocation. So just for clarification, I just want to make sure we're all, I don't want to get the motions wrong here. We got to make sure we're above board. Other questions? Councilor Byrne?
Through the chair, and I understand what goes on and I understand the cost of everything, almost everything, not everything, but everything that is perspective to this township probably is increasing. I also understand the biggest chunk of that increase is being caused by a federal government that's very reckless in spending and is driving the economy the way it's driving it. Not our concern maybe, but I think what I hear from all the residents that I've talked to, and that would number in the hundreds, there's a real concern that there's a lack of respect from all levels of government as far as their wages being taxed away from them. Nobody volunteers to be taxed. They're forced to pay the tax. We're in a situation where we got, three big capital projects that we're paying for. The one down in, Millbrook at a glance looks like it's fairly good value, I think, for the little bit I know at this point. I know the numbers are supposed to be available now. The new 7-bay garage at the downtown cabin, for the lack of a better term, is a nice looking building, but at a glance, again, I personally see a lot of money, taxpayers' money, probably excessively spent. And as a taxpayer here in the community, I fully understand we need a new fire hall. We've needed that for a long while. It'll be 3 or 5 years before we ever find out whether we got good value for the money that's going to be spent there. We still owe money on the hockey rink next door that's being paid off with what's left out of the revenue coming in from what's left of the Kawartha Downs casino, which doesn't come off the tax base, and I understand that totally. But I have to speak for the people that I represent, because that's why I took this job. And I think there needs to be something done other than just talk about it, to get things down to where we're not squeezing the average person that's lived their whole life in this township out of their house because we raise the property taxes and it causes too much stress and strain on them. So I'm just gonna leave it at that.
So with regards to those comments then, so Councillor Byrne, I just don't, is there comments with regards to the budget of the 3.4% that you'd like us to consider at this point? Because that's what we're here to do.
Through the chair, I don't know how that gets done. I know in the last term of this council was able to lower the portion that was paid into the asset allocation funds that generated a favorable look going into election time of a very small increase in the property taxes. And now again, we have to pay the bill. So I don't know whether, I was going to ask some questions and I asked about it earlier. I'm not sure how these debentures are set up or how they're repaid. I'm still in the learning process of that. But I'm guessing at this point that they're pulled out of reserves that we put away over the years, either through asset allocations or some were set aside in the budgets. So is there any way that that can be implemented today without impacting the township in a really negative way moving forward? But we haven't even heard from the school board what they're going to levy. Deputy Mayor Ryan let me know last time that I asked that the 6% from county is going to reflect probably, I think he quoted $52 per 100,000 of MPAC's assessment. And the other really scary part, unless you watch the MPAC video that tells you the taxes might go down when they finally release the new assessments. I don't live in that world, but it scares people. So I don't know what can be done.
Well, through the budget process, one of the things that we look to council for is to give staff direction as to what they're looking for. And I believe that the direction they received at the second budget meeting, if I'm not mistaken, or the first, was to get it to the realm of 3.5%, somewhere in the realm between 3.5 and 4%. Now we're at the point where staff have done their work. It's our job to interpret the documents and ask questions of staff throughout the process to get the levy to where we would like it to be. And that's what the process is designed to accommodate, and that's not what we're here to now make those decisions, not wax poetic about what we think it should be done. So what we could do is the ARR is at 94% in the proposed budget right now. It has been drawn down lower than that. Every 2% there and about of the ARR represents about, every 4% or so of the ARR represents about a 1% levy reduction, if I'm not mistaken. I believe 2% is about 57,000, so call it 4%. That gets us to just about 111, so 113. So 4% reduction to 90% would get the levy to 2.3997%, as I mentioned previously. So like I said, usually these are conversations that staff have the opportunity to work on and towards and try to accommodate in a budget. That's why there's 2 kicks at the can before the final approval, which is what we're here for today. So realistically, I'm not sure exactly how council wishes to proceed, but let's hear from other members of council with regards to the budget, because it does need to be approved today. Yeah, we're not there yet. Deputy Mayor Huntley.
Through you, Chair, and I guess you alluded to it at one point, Councillor Byrne, is you pay now or you pay later, right? So if we pull from the asset reserve in terms of what we want to put into it now, because we're not fully funding it the way we should be. And I believe, Ms. Pope, as you've said, there's assets that are missing from it in the anyway that we need to replace, and that the asset reserve doesn't reflect the cost of an object in the future. It reflects today's purchase price. So as you can use a pickup truck as an easy example. I mean, they were, 30 to 40,000 5 years ago, and now they're 100,000. There's a huge change in the cost of these things. So by not contributing 100% to our asset reserve, we are deferring costs that are going to hit us at a bigger time much later. So I'm not comfortable with removing any more from our asset reserve. So I'm comfortable with where the budget sits today. Obviously, nobody wants to pay more taxes. The reality of the world is everything goes up, and that affects us as much as it affects every other aspect of life. So I'm comfortable with where we are today. I'm glad we got here. And I know we were shooting for sub 4 and we got sub 4. So I think we've done a great job.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. And one thing I did forget, so with regards to the debenture question that was asked earlier, so the debenture portions are amortized over the timeline that we have to fund and complete the work on the projects. I think that's slightly changed a bit, but the amount amortized over, I believe it's a 6-year horizon that we talked about originally, is always funded from the levy. So the levy contribution towards the debenture and towards our municipal costs that we need to commit to in order for the projects to move forward comes out of the levy in small amounts equal over is it 5 or 6 years, Ms. Pope?
Sorry, are you talking about the capital projects like the fire hall, et cetera? Okay, so we're in a construction loan process for that one. We're just finalizing the other ones to go from construction to final loan, which comes to council. We have an estimate based on the rates they've given, and there's 30 and 40-year terms on those estimates for repayment. Of course, when I bring that report forward, it's up to council how to choose those, but they're placeholders in the budget to make sure we have those funds to meet that commitment. So they're not solid. The ones from water wastewater that were brought for council with bylaw, they're set. And there were 3 different components there. I'm going from memory, 30, I think a 5. I forget what the third one was, but I could go and look for that for sure.
No, and then in addition to that, with regards to the fire hall, especially because there's a tenancy agreement with the county that's already been approved of, I'm assuming that would go towards the debenture to subsidize the debenture portion or contribution from the municipality, because that is a commitment. I mean, there's 2 10-year agreements for that tenancy, one, and then a re-up, sort of a readjustment for that 10-year after the first 10 years. Ms. Pope.
Absolutely, you're correct. There's a portion that's the capital component, and then there's a portion that's the operating component, so that we're not taking on the operating cost of their use of that particular area.
Thank you, Ms. Pope. Other questions with regards to the budget, members of council? Seeing none, I've had a request from Councillor Edgerton for a recorded vote on the budget, so I guess we're at that stage now. So there are 5 I'm having trouble squinting here. There are 5 recommendations that council receives the final 2024 budget presentation for adoption. The council approves the 2024 operational budget of $10,700,850, and the council approves the 2024 capital budget of $12,070,663, and that council approves the 2024 environmental budget of $528,690, and that council approves the 2024 water wastewater operating budget of $1,006,876, and a capital budget of $1,680,302, and that council approves a 3.997% municipal residential tax rate increase to fund the 2024 operating capital budget. 3.3997, excuse me. Thank you for that correction. Those are the recommendations. Do I have a mover and a seconder? So moved by Councillor Natchoff, seconded by Deputy Mayor Huntley. Recorded vote, Ms. Page.
Councillor Byrne.
I respectfully say no.
Councillor Natchoff.
Yes.
Mayor Graham.
Yes.
Councillor Edgerton.
No.
Deputy Mayor Huntley.
Yes.
That is carried. Thank you very much, council. Good discussion, and thanks again, staff of all the department heads, in addition to Ms. Pope and her staff for great work on a very difficult budget year. The last report is the CAO report, capital status. Ms. Hurley.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to council, it is before you. If you have any questions, please let us know. With regards to the capital section of it, we wait until the budget is approved. We will then take that on and make the adjustments so that they clearly identify the capital projects that'll be set out for 2024.
Thank you, Ms. Hurley. Questions with regards to the capital and project status report? If not, we'll take a mover and a seconder for that, for receiving it for information. Councillor Byrne, Councillor Natchoff, all in favor? That is approved. Council committee verbal reports. Any councillors with verbal reports? Councillor Natchoff.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, I have two. So the first one was for the Ganaraska Regional Conservation Authority. We had our AGM last week and appointed a new president and vice president. Treasurer remains the same, and I will continue on as well on the Recreational Users Council as the representative from the GRCA executive. The second was with the Centennial Place Special Advisory Committee. We had our second meeting. We had a couple of members that weren't feeling well and couldn't attend, so at the time we discussed projects that the Centennial Place will be doing through the year, how the community, how the additional members on the board can both support and help market the events that they're doing. Discussions were in place about the Centennial Place no longer having a transportation. They had sold their bus, so they're not able to kind of charter residents around as needed. So we were going to come into discussions on what can potentially be done to remedy that situation, to allow for residents to be able to attend events and stuff that were non-medical related, as well as what other events the BIA, the Chamber of Commerce, and the township are having throughout the year, and how the Centennial Place can both help market and involve their residents in the events that the community is going to be having. Next event, our next meeting will be scheduled sometime in the summer. Otherwise, it was a good meeting. Thanks.
Thank you for those updates. Any other member of council with a committee report? Seeing none, I have a list, but nothing too elaborate to report. The library is meeting this evening to hopefully finalize some of the details in the strat plan that will then be coming back to council. We had a police services board meeting on Tuesday of last week that went very well. They're making progress in their strategic plan as well. And there was a number of officers also who received accommodations for some of their great work in the community. And we also had a further presentation about the community first policing summary as well. So that was that project seems to be off and running. There was one other one. Yeah, the medical board. We also met with the medical board and had a good discussion about the year end, and they're going through an audit process to finalize their finances for the new year and see where we're at. So all's well on those committees. And with that, we'll look for a mover and a seconder to accept those committee reports. Councillor Byrne, Councillor Natchoff, all in favor. That is approved. There is no general business. There is no correspondence for information. There is no correspondence for action. Bylaws, that bylaw number 2024-08 being a bylaw to amend the bylaw number 2018-58 as amended, otherwise known as the Township of Cabamonagan zoning bylaw, and that bylaw number 2024-09 official plan amendment number 15, and that bylaw number 2024-10 official plan amendment number 16 be read a first, second, third time and passed this 20th day of February, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the corporate seal attached thereto. Moved by Councillor Natchoff and Councillor Edgerton. All in favor? That is approved. There is no unfinished business. There is, any notices of motion? Seeing none. Confirming bylaw is that bylaw number 2024-11 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the meeting held February 20th, 2024 to be read a first, second, third time and passed this 20th day of February, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the corporate seal attached thereto. Moved by Councillor Natchoff and Councillor Byrne. All in favor? That is approved. Now, lastly, motion to adjourn. Councillor Byrne, Councillor Edgerton, all in favor? That is is approved. Upcoming events, there and meetings, the Cabot Monaghan Public Library Board meeting, as I mentioned, is this evening at 7 p.m. Miller Valley Trails Advisory Committee meeting is Monday, February 26th at 4 p.m. The next regular council meeting is March 4th at 1 p.m. in the chamber. The Millbrook Downtown BAA Board of Management meeting is Thursday, March 7th, 2024 at 8 a.m. And then the subsequent regular council meeting is March 18th, 2024 at 1 p.m. And then lastly, the Municipal Revitalization and Heritage Advisory Committee meeting is Thursday, March 21st, 2024 at 8 a.m. Thank you everyone for attending and we look forward to seeing you again soon in March. Cheers.